Called to order. We'll begin with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do the roll call attendance, Marty, please.
Mary Jo Rosanowski.
Here.
Mary Jo Radcliffe.
Here.
Tom Epps.
Here.
Troy Webb.
Here.
Amy Huffman. Here. Ann Deemer.
Here.
Brad Dobbs.
Here.
Thank you. Has the meeting been noticed according to open meeting law?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. I'm going to make a motion to move items 6.3 and 7.1 to the front of the agenda as we have guests who will be talking.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. We will begin with 6.3, the post-employment benefit discussion, and we'll have a guest on Zoom for that.
She's gonna be ready at 6. If not, I can do the gifts and grants first, but we'll see if she's there. Not yet. I told her like 6:05.
Okay.
So it should
Do you
be
want
good.
to go ahead with gifts and
I
grants?
sure can. So
Okay.
just to update everyone on grants, the district once again partnered with Baraboo School District, Nakusa, and Wisconsin Dells on an American Indian language revitalization grant. The challenging part of this is DPI's timeline. Our grant applications were due like November. We were notified in end of February, and it is for a 21-22 school year, so it means the funds have to be expended by June 30th. This is the same timeline that they've done the last couple of years. We write it as a consortium, and to be honest, the Ho-Chunk Nation Language Department does the bulk of it. A large portion of the grant pays for an individual grant coordinator, Ms. Cleveland, who does the facilitation of it. As far as our district is concerned, we already have our Ho-Chunk language teacher, so this doesn't impact that. A large focus of the grant is to expand cultural events and activities and awareness and education beyond just the Ho-Chunk language classroom. And so when we are successful with the grant, we already do a lot of those activities. We can then reimburse the district through those grant funds. An example would be paying the drum group for graduation is something that we can do through those grant funds when we're successful with it. Because it's divided by so many school districts, it's not a lot of money, but I think it's a nice partnership, and we act as the fiscal agent for all of those districts. The other gift that is in there this month is Brad Dobbs has made a donation to the school district, and we are very, very, very appreciative. In addition to the two to the district, one for supplementing the expenses to the music department trips, another to the Shooting Tigers. There also was a donation to the elementary PTO, which was very generous of him.
Would you like to comment, Brad?
Sure. Yeah, we
Thank you.
when we started this work a year ago, my wife and I agreed we would donate the salary, and we made I made depending on how many meetings you guys made it to $1,530 for all of it. So that's it's easily divisible by 3, and so that's we split it 3 ways, and that's the band trip is. I know they're concerned about funding, and so I felt good about that one. Anyone who shoots knows that the cost of ammo is going way up. So $500 doesn't go very far, but we've raised their cost, and the PTO is really doing some great things. So I gave the rest of it to them. So.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Donation.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the gifts and grants?
I'll make the motion to approve the gift.
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Are we ready for Caitlin? Okay.
There she is.
Caitlin?
Yes, I'm here.
You can only see me, but you are up on the screen and people can hear you through our speakers. So.
Sounds good. So do you want me to just jump in?
So I can give a little introduction, sorry about that. And so the district is trying to, is engaging in a conversation about our post-employment benefit. Currently per handbook, the teachers have a retirement provision that states if they are with the district for 20 years and an additional 5 years in education somewhere, so a total of 25 years in public education, that they would be eligible for a health health insurance premium reimbursement. And so that benefit is $7,000 a year for 5 years for a total of $35,000. Currently, the teacher contract is the only one that has any kind of a retirement provision such as that. The way our language is currently written, it is a post-employment liability. So we have to put money in a trust without knowing how many of our employees are going to reach that milestone, right? Pre-Act 10, I would say that we had a lot of staff members that once you spent 5 to 8 years in a district, you were likely to stay in that district and possibly retire from that district. So reaching that 20 years local was much, much, much more common. Post-Act 10, people are far more fluid because seniority no longer rules the day on keeping positions or hiring. And we've been the benefactor of that. We've had some fantastic teachers with lots of years of experience who have chosen to come here, and so we benefit from those years of experience. But those individuals, there's no way that they could reach that retirement provision because they're not going to stay another 15 years or whatever when they come at that age. So what we have had is a defined benefit. We've been talking to National Insurance about a defined contribution, which means the district starts putting money in a fund from the day that you are hired, and the money starts working for you, so that by the time somebody were retirement age, we would have made a much smaller investment, and their potential for benefit is much greater than that. So defined benefit to defined contribution, we would determine how much we were going to put in. Based on our calculations, we believe that we could expand that benefit to support staff and support services as well. It would be a lesser dollar amount than the teacher, but that from day one that we employed somebody, we started putting money into this account. They would receive monthly statements or quarterly statements so that money looked and felt like theirs. It could be used as a retention tool and has been in some other districts. We've talked about some kind of a vesting schedule. So after 5 years in the district, if you decided to leave, you would get 25% of that. After 10 years, 50%, and still have to reach the 20 years and or retirement to get 100% of that benefit. So it would be financially far more stable to start moving it to an active employment benefit as opposed to this post-employment liability that's out there. And Caitlin's going to share some concepts with you that could talk about us investing the same amount of money and being able to provide a benefit to greater numbers of employees. So take it away, Caitlin.
Thank you. So I'm going to expand on that and probably repeat a little bit of that.
Perfect.
Too. So just to kind of start right at the beginning, as Shelley mentioned, the current retiree benefit is $7,000 a year for 5 years for a total district cost of $35,000 per teacher. So again, this is deposited into a retiree HRA. The biggest benefit of a retiree HRA is that it's 100% tax-free for the retiree to use to pay for eligible insurance premiums. So as a retiree, I'm never getting a W-2, I'm never paying taxes on that. So that's the major benefit of the retiree HRA and the defined benefit, as Shelley mentioned, that we have right now. So our discussion again has focused on how we can restructure this benefit so employees can potentially retire with a benefit greater or equal to that $35,000 without the district actually having to spend that $35,000. So again, one of the primary goals is going to be to reduce costs, but again, reduce that OPEB liability. And part of the benefits of moving to this is that we have a lot more flexibility by moving to, again, away from that defined benefit of $35,000 paid out upon retirement to kind of a defined contribution and those annual smaller contributions. Again, it has flexibility and again, the potential, as Shelley mentioned, to create an opportunity to open up the retirement benefits to more employee groups. So again, instead of paying employees $35,000 over a period of years in retirement, the district can make those smaller annual deposits into employee HRAs during active employment upon each completed years of service. So I'm going to share my screen now. 1 second.
Okay. You have access, Caitlin, or are you getting an error?
Yes, I'm clicking the sharing screen. Can you see? Let me know when you can see something.
We see the spreadsheet. There's no way we could read the numbers, but we can see the columns.
Oh yes, I will zoom. I will zoom on. Okay. So yes. Okay. So you can still see the spreadsheet where it says School District of Black River Falls Investment. Okay. So and zoom in a little bit. So again, instead of paying employees $35,000 over a period of years in retirement, the district can make those smaller annual contributions each year during active employment. So by doing this annually over, say, for example, a 25-year career, the time value of money does a significant amount of the work of growing those employee balances, as opposed to growing those employee balances via a district expense. So for example, if a full-time teacher receives an annual contribution of $800 a year for over a period of years, this illustrates the year's work. So, I'm in year 1, year 10, year 15. So if I scroll down to your year 20 or 25, because if I have to be a teacher for 25 years, let's say all 25 years we're at Black River Falls, here the district, can we see this now? Can you see this number? Maybe?
They can't read it, yes. So, yes,
Oh,
now they got it.
Okay, so if the district spends $800 per year of service over 25 years, that district spend is $20,000 for that employee, as opposed to $35,000 for that employee right now if they retire with the district after 25 years, saving the district $15,000 per employee. So assuming a 5% rate of return in the market, that individual has potential to retire with over $38,000. This is what that number says right there. So that Zoom did not work. That's just fuzzy.
No, we can see it. So the bottom row is the district contribution and the top row
Yep.
is the potential benefit, correct?
Exactly. Yep. This is assuming a 5% rate of return in the market. So on average over 30 years, the rate of return in the market is roughly 7.75%, but to be a little bit more conservative and illustrate 5%, this would be the average rate of return of $20,000 over that year career, and sorry, you're scrolling, and that $38,000. So a $20,000 district spend over a 25-year career, but the retiree ending up with approximately $38,000. So that really illustrates how much the district can save. Again, that roughly $15,000 per employee, because after 25 years, if that individual retire, again, instead of the district paying that $35,000 out in a few years following retirement, the district is paying $800 per year of service and then letting the time value of money doing a lot of the work. So again, an average employee savings of about $15,000. Okay, so I'm going to scroll out of this a little bit so you can maybe see more illustrations of that. But one thing to think about with moving to a program like this is that you're going to have employees at different stages in their careers. So we're going to have people that maybe have only worked for the district for a year or two, that this program is going to work for them almost immediately. But you will also have people that are maybe 58 or 60 or 55 or 50 years old that don't have that 25 years of service and that time value of money on their side. So with moving from a defined benefit to a defined contribution program of, again, say $800 per year of service, the intention would not to be to move everyone immediately to a defined contribution plan. It would kind of be to draw some lines and look at your employees and the district different stages that they're in their careers. So as an example, one thing to think about is we would kind of split people up into maybe 3 different tiers. So, and this time frame is really adjustable, something that the district can determine based on the overall employee group. But one thing we would do is people that are maybe eligible to retire in the next 10 to 15 years, again, those people that don't have the time value of money on their side, the goal would not be to change any employee or any retiree benefits for those individuals, because we don't want to change the plan for someone retiring, in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or 10 to 15 years. So we would keep those individuals roughly in that 10 to 15 years to retirement at the current benefit of $7,000 a year for 5 years for a total of $35,000. Again, with no intention of changing anything for anyone about to retire that does not have the time value of money on their side. Then we would kind of have sort of a tier 2 group, which would be those Black River Falls employees they've been with the district for less than 10 to 15 years. Again, that time frame is very, that can be adjusted. And what we would do is we would move them to the new defined contribution program of $800 per year going forward, but would also give them credit for those prior years of service. So if I've worked for the district for 8 years, for example, I would receive a lump sum contribution of $6,400 plus annual contributions of $800 per year going forward. So again, I'm getting $800 per year of service on a go-forward basis, plus $800 for the years of service I've already completed. So you would do that for each individual, not eligible to retire in the next 10 to 15 years. Again, that time frame is adjustable, but still giving me the credit for the prior year. So that would be what we refer to as a catch-up contribution, essentially with the intention of making everyone whole. And then you would have your new hires going forward that essentially have no prior years of service that would receive the $800 per year of service and would all end up in this program kind of that's illustrated here that I've shared. So one thing to keep in mind is, again, with the new hires, after each completed year of service, I would get my $800 per year. But if I walk out the door after year 1 or year 2 or year 3 or, a short amount of years of service at the district, the intention would not be that that individual only working for the district for a couple of years would get that $800 per year of service. It would not be, portable. We can, and this kind of lends to the flexibility of a defined contribution program, is we can structure this so that individuals, again, can be there for certain years of service and keep maybe 50% of the money and that they become vested in it. So what some districts have leaned towards when they've moved towards a program like this, previously a lot of districts would say, okay, we still have to meet the eligibility requirements for retirement. We're going to change how we pay for it, contribute $800 per year of service, but you still have to retire with the district in order to keep the money. So again, essentially, you still have to be there that same amount of years, same age to be able to keep the money going into this account. Again, using this example of 20 years of service, 25 years of service, I still have to be here 20 years to keep the $20,000 contributed to me, plus all my earnings. What we've seen more recently in today's environment is districts are more transitioning towards a vesting schedule to attract and retain. Because a lot of the times when we hire people maybe more out of college, they're not necessarily thinking about, oh, when I retire 25 years from now, I'll be able to keep this money. It is definitely valuable to see that money go in each year because it will be my account. It will be my account that I see and that, as Shelley mentioned, I get quarterly and annual statements for. But one thing a lot of districts are considering more and more as we're having these discussions are what we refer to as step vesting, which would be that I'm, maybe 50% vested after 10 years of service. If I'm at the district for 10 years, I get to keep half the money in my HRA, and then I'm 75% vested after 15 years of service, and then maybe 100% vested after, once I meet those eligibility requirements for retirement. So the district can adjust that based on kind of what, your goals are, kind of what threshold you want people to stay. Do you want to get that solid 10 years? Or do you want to start vesting people once they've been there for 15 years? So that's definitely an option the district has. Again, there's some additional flexibility is that there's a variable fund lineup, again, for employees to invest these funds in the market and earn a rate of return. So the district can say, hey, you can start to diversify these, the $800 per year immediately once the district contributes it. Or the district can say you have to be here 5 years in order to start diversifying the assets. So there's a lot of flexibility there when it comes to this program, is that you have that step vesting schedule and you can allow employees to diversify after a certain period of time. And again, I'm going to let me know if I'm going to change screen. So can you still see this? It says 5% rate of return for 30 years, assuming a $250 a year deposit. You also, yes? Okay, great. So this would be more of an illustration of employees, maybe if you do support staff at $250 per year of service. So maybe the catch-up contribution. So again, I had mentioned that the teachers, would be credited for prior years of service in an effort to make individuals whole. The support staff, because there's not a current benefit offered, there wouldn't necessarily need to be that catch-up contribution because there's not a current retirement benefit in place. But this kind of illustrates what that district contribution would be, again, per year with the estimated value. So I'll be sure to I'm going to move to, once we get to the range of 20, 25, and 30 years, what that really looks like. So zooming up on that, this is what you can kind of see that after a certain period of time, what the district spend would be versus what the potential value would be in the individual accounts. So this would be assuming a $250 annual deposit for support staff as opposed to the potential $800 for teachers. This is just kind of an illustration of that. Any questions on this information or anything you want me to look at further on these documents?
Is this still not taxable benefit then? Like right now, the teachers get that benefit, it's not taxable. Would this be taxable then?
Was the question whether it would be taxable in this situation?
Yes.
Oh, so it would still be 100% tax-free. So neither the district or individual employees would pay taxes or report this as taxable income at any time. So the money going into this account is 100% tax-free to the individual, and their earnings are also tax-free when they receive a reimbursement. So they actually never report this as a 1099 or as a W-2.
I have one more quick question about that. Let's say we go into that after 5 years, the employee gets 25%, the other 75% goes back to the district?
Yep.
If they leave, yes.
If they leave, let's say they leave and then.
That helps to fund it for perpetuity as well.
Okay, so, okay.
So that kind of leads to my question a little bit, because I'm wondering then, does this money that gets paid in for each employee get treated as a large single pool of dollars or individual then? Because she brought up the point of maybe after a certain amount of time, a person gets to do a little of their own kind of investing on this.
Retention tool, as some districts are trying to retain their staff, it is in an individual account. So I, as a support staff member who've been here 4 years, look at it and say, I have, $2,000 in this account. If I stay one more year and then leave, I get to take 25% of this with me if I leave. So they get to see that money grow throughout the years and it comes in their name, but until they reach the full vesting, if they leave before that, the rest of the amount defaults back to the district pot of dollars, which we use to make the annual payments to all these other pieces. Caitlin and her counterpart, Ken, said that some districts don't allow staff to diversify right from day one because they said, what if somebody gets their contribution, they get wild and crazy with it investing, they lose it all, and then they leave, and there's no money to default back to the district. And so we talked about a couple of years of service before they have that flexibility. Listening to Marty do all the new employee orientations, there is so much. There's so many things that she already goes through. I don't know that. And how would you like to diversify your investment? I'm not sure that is appropriate for day one, but after 5 years, certainly could be something if that's what we decided. Any other questions?
Yeah, for support staff. They don't have the same contracts as teachers, so therefore their years of service actually is more dependent on basically Social Security law than anything else. In other words,
I don't understand why it's different.
Well,
they have a different contract, but I don't
they
understand
are
why
under
years of
contract.
service would be different.
Well, I'm just saying that they don't have a 25 years and then they've achieved retirement necessarily. If they're under a certain age, is that correct? In other words, if they're under 65 right now, currently, and they did 25 years and they're at 55 years old, will they be able to draw from this without any question at all, or is that because something? Because I know I'm just saying some plans say you have to reach a certain age. I was just asking if that's included in this or not.
And so I just want to make sure I'm answering fully.
Sure.
So they have no retirement provision now, so that language doesn't exist. When we talk about investing schedule, we would create that, at what point they're eligible for it and what percentage they would be at. So their years of service is calculated the same. For the Wisconsin retirement system, support staff years of service are calculated the same way teachers, administrators, every school employee. So you just confuse me with the years of service piece. We get to craft the language about when they're eligible for that benefit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really like that, the benefit considering for the other staff was, I think that's a really important piece that we're lacking.
We've seen the problems with retention of support staff, especially lately.
Absolutely. And so our hope as an admin team is that we would keep talking through this process and it would come to you in the form of a budget recommendation in our budget approval process moving forward. I can tell you right now that we are confident that the amount that we currently budget each year to go. Wow. The building is tired today, my God.
It's shutting down.
The amount that we budget each year to put into that OPEB liability, that line item budget is enough to fund the contribution for all of the employee groups that we were talking about. So the new dollars that we would need to find is what kind of catch up we would be able to do for those people that aren't starting from day one of hire. So,
Our post-employment trust that we already have established as well would help with that group one that Caitlin talked about that we know are gonna retire and get the $35,000. We would use our trust to fund those because we have that liability out there for the next 2 years. So it's the catch-up that we're still figuring out and how to fund that.
So again, it'll come to you for approval with the budget process. Does anyone have any serious concerns that we should start digging into or any further questions that we should dig around for? We did have each of the employee group handbook meetings this week and there was generally approval and there was appreciation from the support services for sure that they would be included in some kind of a retirement provision. The support services is a really unique group because it's some 12-month secretarial staff. It is our supervisors like food service and technology, and then it's also our school psychologists and our school nurse and our speech and language paths. And so there's some, DPI licensed Amy Hunter, right? Our mental health navigator. So it's a really diverse group. Some support staff, some DPI licensed professional staff, and so the fact that people think of our speech and language paths more like teachers, they do not qualify for any of that language because they're support services. So.
Any other questions or comments?
So it'll be between NIS, Jill, and you to kind of crunch the numbers to see where the point of no return for
Point of fiscal responsibility and retention benefit for staff is what we're hoping for. Okay. Caitlin, thanks so much for making yourself available this evening. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Caitlin.
Next on the agenda is the mental health grant review. We have Amy here tonight.
Just as a reminder for the board, last year during our core agenda review, somebody had asked if we could get an annual update on this grant, and so using our core agenda is the absolute perfect vehicle for this to happen. So each March, we should expect an update as long as we are successful with the grant. A reminder, we are in year one of a 2-year renewal, and so for next year, there's no grant application, but with everything we've heard about funding for mental health, we're pretty confident there will be grants available for that next 2-year cycle. But we are very excited to have Amy Hunter with us tonight. She just does an amazing job as our mental health navigator. And I love that term navigator because that's absolutely what she does, try to help families navigate the process to get to resources. So take it away.
Thanks, Shelley. Yeah, for those of you who may not know me, I am Amy Hunter. I was hired back in October of 2019 as the mental health navigator for the district. And so I have a little bit of background information that we'll start going into here, and then we'll get into kind of how the year has progressed since we've been back face to face. So this may be a refresher for some, but I just wanted to provide a little bit of background information. So this is the second 2-year cycle that we have applied and been awarded for the school-based mental health grant. The state approved $10.5 million during their biennial budget, and that's what is funding the grant work that's happening now and in the previous budgets before, grants before. As a district, we've been super fortunate to have applied twice and been awarded the full grant each time that we have applied. So with that school-based mental health grant, we have been able to bring in $300,000 in grant money to our district to help with mental health services for our students.
If I could pause for one moment. Yes, we've been very lucky to bring those services in, but that grant application is no joke. And Amy and Stephanie Brigham just did a fantastic job both times working through it and the data that they needed to collect. And it just was a really rigorous process. And so part of that is kudos to the hard work going into it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of data points that we put in there, that's for sure. With the most recent grant cycle that was awarded, there was actually 153 different public, charter, and consortiums that were granted the dollars, and with that they varied from $12,000 a year to $75,000 per year, and we landed at the $75,000 mark. The state has made word that we will likely be able to and eligible to apply for the next grant pending the biennium grant again that will go through, but they're hoping that competitive process will open in early 2023. I think last time we started in January to submit in May, so yes, very rigorous. The next slide, yep. So I'm sure you guys can all remember, but when we had the community health needs assessment done the last few times, you seen on there each and every time that we need more mental health providers in our county. And so to see the numbers up there, you guys, that we have 9 providers coming into our school to provide services is absolutely astounding to me. I think it's just amazing to think that we were fortunate enough and trusted enough to be partners with these people to have them come in and provide the services to our students. Currently, last year, I guess, when I wrote the grant, we were hoping to have 1 provider in our building 3 days a week, but now we have a minimum of 1 therapist in our building 5 days a week. And so we definitely were able to meet that goal of the grant, and it feels good to know that there are the providers there to help do some of the work that we are needing them to do. I've been having kind of some ongoing conversations with Ho-Chunk Nation Behavioral Health, Jackson County Department of Health and Human Services, and Gateway regarding their interest in providing school-based therapy. And they definitely have the interest there. They have the MOUs in their possession. We're just waiting for them to review, sign, and get back to us, along with the supporting documents that we need for them to be in our schools to provide these services. Once those are received, they'll be able to come into our district as additional providers and offer services to our students through that route as well. I also reached out to Black River Healthcare Clinic in November of 21, asking about what their thoughts were and if they felt like they were able to accommodate school-based mental health services at that time. They were quite new and still getting people boarded on and stuff, and they did not feel at that time that they would be able to accommodate that request. But at the beginning of every school year, I meet with all of the counseling agencies in our local community, engage their level of interest. Who's willing to come here and provide the services to our students, or is it not, feasible for their agency to do that? And then based on that, they will talk to their staff and ask the staff if they're willing to come and offer that service to our school, because they're not required to offer services in our school setting. It's definitely a service that they provide, which our students and families benefit from. And then based on that will be who we get to pick from as school-based mental health providers. The credentials of the people that are coming into our school, it's kind of a long list, so I apologize for that, but we have a licensed clinical social worker, we have licensed professional counselors, clinical substance abuse counselor, certified dialectical behavioral therapist, certified advanced practice social worker, licensed professional counselors in training, substance abuse counselor in training, and then our intern who's in their last degree of their master's program, finishing up their practicum. All the credentials are issued by the State of Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services, and then they're monitored by the Division of Legal Services and Compliance Monitoring Unit, all at Madison. So then a majority of our students who are seen in our school are actually seen face-to-face. So we have our providers coming in, they're sitting in a confidential space having their session. We do have a handful of students who prefer telehealth. I don't know, personal preference, I guess, but we do have a handful of students there. We also provide the confidential space for them for those services as well, just like if it was a face-to-face appointment with the students. The district requires an MOU for all of our community partners who are providing services to our students in our schools. Within the MOU, we request the current background checks of all the providers that are coming into our schools. We have to have those on file, and that also includes a certificate of liability insurance, where they add the district onto their insurance. In the MOU, it also states that all mental health services that are being provided are in accordance with the requirements and regulations that are set forth by the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services, the Wisconsin Department of Health Services Division of Quality Assurance, and then in compliance with all other applicable Wisconsin and federal state laws. And I also want to be very clear, like there's no exchange of money between us and our community partners. We don't pay them any money to come in. They don't pay us for coming in. There's just no exchange of money that happens there. We're just simply providing that confidential space for the students to utilize to get their services. The individual therapy that's provided to the students is billed through the family's insurance, and again, it's at no cost to the district. The community partners billing department takes care of all of that with submitting the billing to the insurance company and collecting and processing the payments that are coming in for the families. It's just like if the student was being seen in the clinic out in the community. So the referral process, staff can refer to me only after they've had a conversation with the family. If the family is not interested in mental health services, I am not going to reach out to the family. It's completely up to them. Sometimes it's just not for everybody, or sometimes they have other things in place where they would like to try first. So this is a completely voluntary process and service that our district has been fortunate to be able to offer to our students and their families, but it is not something that we will require them to do. So if the initial contact with the family is, nope, I'm good, I don't do anything. If it's, well, yeah, I would like to hear more about that, or can you tell me more about it, then I will reach out to them and give them whatever information they would like, or explain that process a little bit more for them. But it's definitely not anything that is required. Families can also request school-based mental health services, talking to any of our staff members. They'll get the information either to myself, or typically it comes through the school counselor or the school social worker, and then they'll get it to me, and then I'll be in contact with them. Or of course, the students themselves can refer as well. Age appropriate, of course, right? So if they're able to identify that they're not feeling well, or that they need additional support for their mental health, they can also reach out to either a trusted adult and they can get connected with me, or they can connect with me directly as well. All right. So when supporting the school-based mental health model, we're able to strengthen our collaboration with our students, families, and partners, but we're also increasing the students' access to mental health services based on the barriers that our families experience in this rural community. So like time away from work, transportation, or even the long waiting lists have been an issue in the past. Students are also missing less academic time by having the service provided in the classroom. So the student, it's time for their therapy appointment, they get called down to the office, they go to their therapy, they walk back up to the classroom. If they were to leave our building to go receive services in the community, if it's local, they have the transportation time to get there, their appointment, and transportation time to get back to our school if they come back to school in the afternoon. You know, sometimes I think we've seen in the past where if they've had an appointment, it's kind of like an all-day thing where they miss an entire day. But we're seeing that the students are, for therapy, are spending more time in the classroom and missing less academic time.
Do parents ever come and do the therapy with the child?
I don't have that specific information, but I know when I was talking to our partners in the community before school started, they asked if they could have a last session of the day specifically for that. So if they felt that they needed to pull the parents in, that they could do like a family session at the end of the day, and then the parents could just take the student and go at the end of that session. So I don't know if it's happened specifically this year, but I know that in those collaborations meetings at the beginning of the year, that was something that was asked by multiple different agencies. Good question. So here's where we are as of March 15th of 22. As you will see up there, 159 students have been referred to the school-based mental health program since the beginning of the year. The columns across the top, we'll start in the second one there where it says students receiving school-based mental health services. So of the 159, we have 102 students in our district that are seeing a therapist in our schools every single week. A majority of those appointments are weekly. There are some students that see therapists bi-weekly and monthly, but most of those are weekly appointments. The next group of students that you will see, they were referred, but they chose to see somebody out in the community, or they were actually already connected with somebody when I had received the referral, but we just didn't find that out until I had a couple more conversations had with them to learn that they were already connected with a therapist, but they're in the community. And then the other ones were referred and thought that it was better for their student to receive the services in the community rather than in the school, and so that's where they stayed. I have 8 students who are in the referral process, so I'm working through various stages with the families on that. And then I have 7 who are on our wait list. So our providers that are coming into the into the school right now are at max capacity. They do not have any more room to take on any more students. And so I had been able to contact these families and explain that I could refer to the community and they wouldn't have to necessarily wait because we don't know how long they will be on the wait list, but they were pretty adamant that it was barriers that was limiting them from being able to go out into the community to receive services. So whether it was transportation issues, no gas, or financial constraints, lives out in the country, can't miss work. I mean, there's just a lot of different things, but they wanted to remain on the school-based waitlist part. And then there's the one that says declined mental health services. I use that very loosely and very vaguely as an umbrella to catch kind of all the reasons why the student didn't end up receiving services at the end. And some of them definitely were. Their circumstances had changed by the time I got in touch with them, and they didn't feel like they needed the services anymore. So they definitely declined the service. But then there was 1 or 2 that they had moved before I finished the process getting through from start to finish with them, or after multiple attempts of me not being able to get a hold of parents or sending paperwork home and not getting that back. That's where kind of the rest of them fell in there too. So it says decline, but they're not all necessarily hard and fast decline services. So I reached out to Joey because I was curious when I see, oops, sorry, Jill.
Sorry, no.
When I seen that number of 159, I reached out to Joey to see what our student enrollment numbers were for the year. And Joey sent me that on February 28th, our district enrollment numbers were 1,584. So that's about 10% of our student enrollment population that were referred for mental health services up till March 15th of this year. When I look at the 123 students that are participating in school and community combined, that's about 8% of our student population who are actively receiving those services. And then if I just look at the school-based services alone, that's 6.4% of our student enrollment numbers.
Before you go on, I just need to comment. I remember very clearly being an elementary principal, and a family would want their child to receive counseling, and we had like 3 phone numbers in the community that we could refer them to, and they would call and say, it's a 6-month wait, it's a 9-month wait, it is a list longer than is even reasonable. I was stunned when I saw that 102 were receiving services on a weekly basis, and even the 21 in the community, because even the community-based resources couldn't have sustained many more than that at the time. So I just think this is fantastic. Would you have an estimate from the time a referral is made to the time the student is able to see the first counselor? If the family agrees, like you introduce it and the family says, yes, we're in, what do you think that time is?
I would say on average, it would probably be about 6 weeks probably. Depending on, it could be sooner, but I would say on average, it's probably about 6 weeks. And that's a long time if a family feels like their kid is in crisis. Like, that's a really long time.
It is, but it's a lot shorter than 6 months.
Right. But also, if the kid is in crisis or the student is in crisis or family, they also know that they can go, to the local ER or the crisis line or things like that. There are other resources for that. But when you are in desperate need of help, that's a long time to wait. But it is a lot better than what it was, for sure.
I'm just amazed at the number of providers locally. I'm really amazed at
It
that.
has increased.
It's getting better. It's getting better. And then when Shelley asked me to present or mentioned about me presenting at the board, I wanted to reach out to our community partners I asked them for the gift of feedback that I could share with you guys because they're in it day in, day out. This is what their experiences are when they're coming into our schools. And I just wanted to know what we could be doing better or what some of our opportunities and successes were. And so I'll just let you read a moment. It may have been in your board paperwork too, I don't know, to see a little bit what they had to say about our opportunities, mostly about space. And, you know, one thing about inconsistent attendance, which is hard to kind of control too. But then our celebrations, it just sounded like coming into the schools, it's been very welcoming and very positive for them. It's been a pretty smooth process for them. So I think we're on the right path of doing really, really good things here. And hopefully it's sustainable for the future.
Any questions for Amy?
One thing I really liked is, we've been struggling how to strengthen our collaboration with families, and that is one focus here. I really do like that. I like the responses, the celebrations, the opportunities, but I would love to see parents, what maybe they had to say.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I had enough time to like shoot out an email to that specific group of parents, but that is something from my grant work that I'm planning on doing by the end of the year, is to get that information. And then I could have that available for next time or something, but that is definitely, and I also want to do like the middle school and high school age students too, to get their perspective as a student, how they feel during that process, if they feel like it's comfortable, it's safe, and whatnot too. So those two target groups are definitely on my list to gather data from, to see how they feel we're doing too.
And I think what would be interesting for me to know is how many of those students were referred by school, how many by parents, how many by themselves. That might just be an interesting data point.
Yeah, I don't have that currently, but
yeah, I'm sure you don't share it, but it might be interesting.
Yeah.
To know that.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Amy.
Keep up the great work.
Yes,
Thanks, Amy.
thank you. We have no public comments registered tonight, so we'll move on to 5.3, updates on servant-led communities.
Sure, so I realize that it has been quite a while since I updated the board on the workings of the servant-led community, and so just wanted to take this opportunity. I included in your packet just an overall timeline of the events that have taken place with that group. And I can tell you, I looked at the membership list, and not everybody comes every time, but from back in 2019 until current, there's over 100 people in our community that have engaged in different ways. COVID came, and this was the one group that kept meeting faithfully virtually, and we actually, I think, have larger attendance because we meet at 7:30 in the morning virtually, and it's a time that just works for a lot of people before they get busy in the rest of their day that we gather. So it continues to be facilitated by Marianne Torkelson from CCU, Mary Beth White Jacobs from Black River Memorial Hospital for a couple more months. She's retiring June 30th, and myself. And so we are at the point that we are starting to write aggressive grants in addition to some of the smaller ones. So the group has already received a $28,000 grant. Sorry, the timeline was really for your information if you're interested. We started with this group and we asked them what are our greatest areas of need in the community, and the focus of the group has always been, we believe that we have a very, very generous community, and we believe that we have a lot of resources. We believe our community lacks connections between those resources, so that if I am a person in need, I ask somebody, where do I go for help with housing? And you might be given one name, so you go and tell them that whole story. By the time you get done telling your whole story, they're gonna say, nope, sorry, you need to go over here. So then you trek across town, hopefully you have transportation, and tell them your whole story about housing, and they say, well, I'm so sorry you're experiencing that. You know what, we don't have housing, that's over here. So we just believe that there's a lot of really, really, really good agencies. We just aren't very connected. So we did, we learned a lot about other community agencies. I don't know how many people are familiar with Children's Wisconsin. That is an amazing resource for families of young kids in our community. We were all doing this work and didn't even know all that they are able to do for kids. So it's just a fantastic resource. We connected with the Great Rivers Hub, which is out of La Crosse. They work under,
Seven members.
United Way, thank you. I did the hands and she called it. Thanks, Amy. We can play charades, I think, right? It is United Way. Black River Falls does not have a local United Way. Apparently there's a chapter that's registered in Clark County that we're supposed to, but it's not functional. But the Great Rivers Hub has this model where they put out, they're called community health workers, but they are not medical staff. What they are is they are people, similar to the story that we just heard Amy tell us, they work as navigators. So there is a family that has been referred or has been identified as in need. They connect with a community health worker, and that health worker is trained on all the resources in the community. And that health worker helps them to complete pathways. Now, the Great Rivers Hub has been doing this for several years. They have what they call a braided funding model because these people who are referred are actually completing pathways towards strengthening families. Some might be substance abuse recovery, some might be housing, some have been released from jail and have no resources and what to do. Some have a serious medical condition that they can't manage on their own. There's any number of pathways that exist, and you can see them. The pathways are listed right on the side there. So housing, medical assessment, tobacco cessation, all of those pieces are on there. When you complete those pathways, there's Medicaid reimbursement. So this braided funding model is that the community health worker begins with a salary from an organization, but eventually it becomes self-sustaining because they are helping so many people complete the pathways that they're getting Medicaid reimbursable. So the Great Rivers Hub out of La Crosse has been doing this for years, and I shared with you guys their success reports. They've really got a fantastic model. Their model is fantastic, and they're really interested in expanding it. And so they've kind of attached to our servant-led community. We are not talking about the district hiring a community health worker, not at all. I'm not giving you this information because we're asking for money. I want you to be aware that I attend and am helping to drive this work on behalf of the district, because I hope we can all agree that the stronger our families are, the more connected our people are to the resources that we have, the higher achievement, the higher engagement, all of those things. So we just completed, I just put it in there later, we just completed like a $200,000 grant. And we passed the first screener, we passed the second screener, and now we have to wait till May to find out. That grant would be enough money for our community to hire 2 community health workers that could start small and work their way up and work their way into it. Eventually it becomes that self-sustaining model. We've talked a lot to interfaith caregivers because we feel like that is an organization that has a very sustainable model in our community, because look at the amazing work that they do, and they're building a new facility. We're not latching on to their mission because they have their own board of directors that are figuring that out. The servant-led community is working to become its own 501c3, but in the meantime are working along with interfaith, because right now, a lot of these people that we're talking about serving through community health workers are going to interfaith and saying, do you know where I can get housing? Do you know where I can get food? Do you know where school supplies, whatever it may be, because they're a physical location. And to be honest, right now, they're so close to the jail that they said they get a lot of people that are released from jail that walk up to the interfaith office. So we're talking about partnering with places like that that already have a very strong reputation and service in our community, and how can we augment that and help that along. So we're really hopeful for this grant. Lindsay Pearl is the executive director of the Great Rivers Hub. She actually helped us with the grant application. She kind of helped to oversee because she would love to help model this work after. What we're kind of thinking is, if we are successful with the grant and other grants after that, that we'd like to see community health workers connected to other organizations. For example, the hospital might house a community health worker. Perhaps the district would house one funded through this braided funding model. Perhaps Interfaith would have one, kind of spread them out so that families in need in our community have a couple entry points into that hub model, into finding those resources. So again, it's just been a really long time since we've talked about it. I wanted to give you that update. There's a really great group of people. That servant-led group has kind of had a small, this has been our primary focus for quite some time, this grant writing and this hub model, but there's another group that has broken off, just motivated people about the homeless situation in Black River, and particularly Vicki, who works down at the library. She said that they see an awful lot of the homeless, and so we talked about the library perhaps housing a community health worker as well, because much like Amy's role in navigating, remove the layers of complication, help people tell their story one time, and then someone else who knows how to navigate the system assist them, so that the evidence behind that is that the success rate for these people is far, far, far stronger. Interestingly, when we talked about who would be a community health worker, and I don't like that name because to me, I feel like if you say to a family in need, we have a community health worker, I feel like they're gonna say, well, I don't have health insurance, I don't wanna mess with that, right? I feel like the word health in there kind of intimidates people. So we've talked about, could we call it a community resource navigator or something like that? I don't know, but the grant is written on a community health worker because that's the hub model. But, I lost my train of thought. Sustainable.
What that person looks like?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. How do we find those community health workers, not somebody who works in the health field? The community hub model said that they try to find people who have already successfully navigated the system. So perhaps it's somebody who at one point found themselves in need of resources for food or for housing, and they have been able to successfully navigate the system. Perhaps it's somebody who's already successfully done an AODA cessation program and is successful. And so the idea is that it's people who speak the language, who can be very much an advocate for that individual, and that individual feels very much able to talk to and talk through and all of those things. So we don't know who those people might be yet, but it was a really interesting conversation. The Sheriff's Department is heavily involved in the discussion. There's a lot of organizations that have representation in that group that keep popping in and out to that work. So May is when we find out about this large grant, but we've already received almost $30,000 in funding from the Franciscan Sisters in La Crosse, and so we believe by like June we'll be able to hire our first part-time community health worker and get that model started. And the faster we get through that first, they say it takes between 9 and 12 months before the funding starts to come back. So you have to be able to fund the salary for that first part, which is the grant funds. The reason that it takes so long to get that reimbursement is because they have to complete the pathway, and if any of these problems were easy fixes, they wouldn't need help getting there. And so the idea is that they have to successfully complete the pathway before any of that funding reimbursement is available.
So where are you gonna house the initial community health?
The hospital has agreed to do it, and so Mary Beth White Jacobs is retiring from the hospital this June 30th, but she has a commitment from the board of directors from the hospital and the other leadership team that they will be the fiscal agent for the grant the first time around and would house that first one. So any questions? I don't need anything, just wanted to keep you informed of that work.
Yeah, what a big, come a long ways.
It's exciting
since
stuff this week is.
Yes. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Childcare task force discussion.
All right. So this is, in my opinion, another way that the district works to serve the community that supports it, right? So that community health worker is 100% to benefit our families, knowing that healthy, stronger families lead to healthier, stronger kids attending school, right? So the childcare situation is yet another example of a significant need in our community. And so just in talking to Marianne Torkelson, who's still leading this work, yes, she's involved in both of these groups that we're talking about tonight. Something about the number of spots, like right now they have between 250 and 285 slots for childcare in our area, and we need over 1,000 in order for everyone to be employed at the level they would like to be employed at. And so this is very much being driven by business partnerships as well. When we were hosting our business partnership meetings, childcare is a significant reason why employees are not going to work, because they can't find reliable childcare. I would say that COVID really exacerbated that problem with some of the childcare centers repeatedly closing down and then reopening up. I mean, that problem really got an awful lot worse. So again, I don't come to you with an ask. I just wanted to keep you informed that childcare task force, the district was heavily involved in conversations about childcare pre-COVID. We were having conversations here about what other districts were partnering with community agencies to provide childcare centers in their schools. And there are statewide networks of other districts who are doing that. There's also some blended community models with a co-op portion of the childcare with business partnerships, all of this stuff in an effort to allow parents that want to be more fully employed to be able to be more fully employed. And of course, as a school, we have a vested interest in our kids getting quality childcare prior to school. So it makes logical sense that we're involved in that. So then COVID came and the district had to back way off of that childcare task force because we were trying to keep our own heads above water. The task force continued, and so they are moving right along as well. They are writing additional grants as well, and they are very interested in knowing what level of involvement the district is interested in. I shared with you just this childcare funding models sheet, and we talked a little bit about this, again, pre-COVID. Last time we were having conversations. There are districts all over the state that are using all different kinds of models to fund their childcare centers. You might recall that Blair Taylor, just their most recent referendum was to build a childcare facility attached to their school. Again, schools have a vested interest in quality childcare. This one, Mary Ann actually sent to me, it was the School Board Community Service Fund. And so remember that we have Fund 80. We have the ability to levy funds into Fund 80 for a designated purpose, such as childcare. That is one of the 4 ways that different districts around the state are helping to fund the childcare piece. I would say right now, our conversations with Mary Ann, and I don't know how many of you know Michaela Conlin-Bew. She is just a spitfire and an amazing grant writer. She is all over this stuff, and they are writing an awful lot of grants. And one of the more recent conversations that I thought was super creative, so we have a workforce issue when it comes to our support staff. We are having a hard time finding people who want to be employed regularly, right? We've had a lot of start, stop. There's just been a lot of concerns there. We know health insurance is part of it. We know salary is part of it. We know all those things. Just for your information, if we hire a individual support staff member who is works less than 35 hours a week, if it's single, they get the health insurance premium at the same rate. But if it's a family plan they need, it's only 50% because they don't work over the 35 hours. So we think that's probably part of the discussion. So they are looking at writing a grant that would perhaps create some kind of a partnership between the district and this child care task force, that perhaps we could work together, that our support staff could get up to full-time hours by working part-time childcare, part-time school district, so that we could share in that expense of the health insurance benefit. Perhaps that would level it out. It might be a far more desirable job if it was full-time employment with full-time benefits. Perhaps we could, because that is the crisis in childcare. They can't find people willing to work it. If they bill high enough to be able to pay decent wages for childcare, then families can't afford to get that service. So grants are quite readily available right now for creative solutions to that childcare idea. So they are asking if we are interested in engaging in that conversation, not asking for any funding. Any grants would be approved by the board before they were written, but they are interested in knowing if we are willing to start engaging more heavily in that conversation. And so I wanted to re-engage in the conversation with the board to see what your thoughts are. Again, no ask for money or resources, just Jill and I's time at this point. So, thoughts, conversations?
I will go. I've had several conversations with people involved in lack of childcare just because of my past in the childcare field as well. But we have staff I know who have had to quit because they couldn't have childcare, and staff in our district who are driving to another city for childcare, and also people who just can't take jobs because they don't have childcare. And absolutely, I think we need to be on board as a community to support quality childcare for our families and in order for our workers.
Yeah, this is for our employees as a district. This is for our employees as a community. I sat on the Children's Learning Village Montessori Academy board for a short while while we were there, and it's a tough. Childcare is tough. It's a low margin, if there's any margin. It's tough.
Just today, I had a conversation with a young couple who have their children living with grandparents out of our district because they can't have childcare, and they run a business together and they can't do it, and they want to have their children back home, but there's no childcare at all. And I mean that's a tragedy when families have to go to those extremes.
I'm very interested in exploring the possibilities of what we could do to partner.
Yeah.
Is there any way to have a board representative join the child care task force out of curiosity?
I would ask Jill. She's far more active in that task force than I am.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've broken off into individual grant writing groups right now, or if there is still
So
full
there's,
task force meetings.
yeah, so there's the task force and then there's the Jackson County Child Care Network, which they kind of run simultaneously, but the task force is a lot of the agencies. The board members from the Jackson County Child Care Network are on there too, but it's learning from all these agencies. Like, I didn't realize how many agencies are out there to help people get childcare going in their home or to assist them with grants for the cost of a class to do childcare or whatever it is. I'll talk to Mary Ann. I don't think there'd be a problem, but let me check with her and see if that. Yeah.
I feel like we always talk about the need for our community to support the work of the schools, but I feel like that has to be a two-way street. And so both of these last two topics were ways that we are trying to help grow the community and do our part to make sure it is still a place where people choose to be, right? All right, that was all that I had on that. Thank you for those discussions.
Okay, COVID dashboards and mitigation.
So I kept it on the agenda because I said we would. I have no new information to share. I don't know if it's something you want to remain on the agenda or...
Let's hope we don't need it for a long time. That's what I said.
It's good not to talk about it.
I just have one. What mitigations are we doing, if any, right now? Is there anything?
If you're sick, stay home.
That's it. Good enough. Okay.
Yeah, so that is an over-exaggeration. So we are not quarantining anyone. We are still notifying. For example, today we actually had 2 positive staff members. And so we notified those classrooms and said, just so you know, your child has been exposed. It is your choice whether to quarantine or to mask or any of those things. So we notify is what we're doing. If you are ill, we do make our staff bring in, so we are accepting home tests now just because of the testing weirdness. And so if somebody tests positive, they have the 5 days that they need to be out from symptom onset, and then our staff have to mask for 10 days following symptom onset. I will tell you, unless people had more discussion on that, I can keep it on each month just to wave goodbye in the rearview mirror to it, I would hope.
I hope so.
But I wanted to share that Accelerated Labs that are doing the testing free of charge, they've reached out and asked us if we want them to continue community testing for the summer. I saw that the hospital just put something out stating that they are no longer going to be doing community testing. It is free of charge for us. Clearly it's costing somebody money, but it is not a local taxpayer expense here. I'm guessing it was part of Governor Evers' statewide rollout to increase testing. They have now told us they can be open for the community. Are you okay if I say they can continue to park their freestanding trailer for the summer? And during Christmas break, we didn't want them to have access to Red Creek because there were days that nobody was there. So they brought a freestanding thing that just needed power and they tested from that. Are you all good with offering that for community members?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And that's what we'll do.
Okay. Next is WASB convention follow-up. As requested, we have this for discussion again. Anybody want to start?
Well, I was not here at the last meeting, but I did watch from where I was. And I was struck from what I think it was you said that the amount that was spent was a teacher's budget, and I thought, goodness, I think when I taught, it was $250 for a classroom budget, so I don't think a classroom budget is that much. But I had signed up for that convention, and I bowed out either late December or early January because I wasn't comfortable with the COVID numbers rising. So I know, Troy, you knew what was required, and I feel that you should have followed that. And my feeling is that you didn't. I also have to mention watching that I saw everybody else at the last meeting was masked, except for you, and I'm not sure why, but I guess I know why. But I didn't think that was right either when everybody else was masked.
I was just gonna say that I had asked for kind of a timeline of when people signed up, what the requirements were at sign up, when they changed, and when that was made known and how late a person could withdraw and the school could get a refund.
So what I know is January 3rd is when WASB sent out their COVID protocols. There was some conversation in December about them, but January 3rd was when they sent out their vaccine or negative test to be required. The convention started on Tuesday, January 18th. The hotel confirmation that Marty sent to us says, if you wish to cancel, please do so by 11:59 p.m. on January 17th. So January 3rd was the original notification. There were weekly follow-ups from that initial conversation. I personally called Troy the week before and said, have you seen the expectations? And he said, I'm aware. I said, great. I just want to make sure the district doesn't pay for expenses that won't be incurred. He said, I'm aware. And so we hung up and thought we were moving forward. So.
My turn now? Okay. All right. I have a little, I'm reading my phone because I wrote those. Basically, for one thing, I'd like to formally apologize for my misstatement in my letter to the editor regarding the WASB convention. It was, I read too fast, sorry. In regard to the WASB convention, I was not originally chosen to vote. However, the need to use the alternate came in, and I happily filled that role. And so I was wrong to say I did not vote. I should have said I was not allowed to participate. I do apologize. You pointed that out, Brad, and you were right. It was in my haste of writing, I did not pay attention to myself when I was typing, so that was my mistake. But as far as it goes to go to WSB, I did go there with the intention to participate. I actually, also while I was there, I did ask to our WSB member representative, Ben Niehaus, if I could actually go ahead and mask up, and I was healthy. Please let me participate. He rejected me, with which is his right. And then at the same time, I did ask 2 days, the second day as well. And in the meantime, I did talk to our board president, Mary Jo, who is also on the WASB board, if there was some way to allow me to participate. And she said there was not. So I did actually want to
Troy, I want to make a correction. The way you could participate would be to have a negative test and to mask.
That was the protocols.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
not
But
arguing the protocols said.
it made you, just when you stated that, it sounded like I wouldn't allow you to participate.
No, I was asking you.
No,
as a board
you could
member.
participate.
Yeah, which is what I did do.
Well, okay.
I asked you. I mean, we had a discussion. I mean,
Yeah.
about that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it was.
But I don't have that power to change the protocol for the city of Milwaukee.
But City of Milwaukee only required a mask. There was
Right.
no vaccination.
WASB, WASBO, the WASDA, and Wisconsin Center required the mitigation that was required in order to have an in-person convention.
May I finish my statement now?
Yeah, but I wanted to have correct information.
Okay. That's where you are, right, bro? Okay. Over the last 2 years, the school district has, per board policy, restricted healthy students from attending school through no fault of their own. The board adopted restrictive policies that cause both inconvenience to parents, students, and families, as well as lost time learning to students. These policies should never be allowed to happen again in this district or at a state convention. This type of activity leads to a slippery slope for politics to take a hold of both this district and the state, as regards to WASB. We need to stand together against this action and similar actions that take away from the functions and or learning. Under no circumstances should we ever discriminate against anyone based on their political ideals, especially when it comes to participation in discussions about these very things. I stand by my conviction to attend this event and unfortunately was unable to participate in the way that I had planned to. I will stand by the decision that is made by this board. But I also will say that there are many people in the district that understand the frustrations of being isolated away from this board and this administration. COVID mitigation was overbearing and unproductive. The proof is how we act now. COVID is still here and many of our mitigations have ended. No end in sight for the testing as of right now. And that seems to be no-win situation for students in the future if they're in close contact, which has been changed as right now as of before I wrote this. So, but I don't want this to happen again. Is my point. If we continue the arbitrary process of exposure and isolation, we will have we still have high case numbers, and we will still have students that are unable to attend school and sporting events in the future. And basically, it's in our best interest to stop discriminating against those who don't align with people's fears and start allowing everyone to resume the process of learning and administration, and also for personal risk assessment. No more should we move people that we find unclean and to other areas or restrict anyone's ability to participate based on their personal assessment of risks. And so what I'm saying is, in the past, we actually have taken people out of this boardroom based on how they assumed risk. And if we want to start pointing fingers at, hey, somebody did here something wrong, someone did wrong over here, and if it was their conviction, I don't see a problem with it. So I don't need to have any more discussion. As you guys have questions, I will be glad to answer them. But as far as this discussion was brought up by another board member, so this is why we're here tonight.
I have a question. So before going, the protocol was you had to be masked and vaccinated, or if you weren't.
Vaccine or negative test to be required for convention is the email that went out.
Okay, so you knew that was the requirement, and you're not vaxxed apparently, which is, I make no judgment on that. But you knew that you had to be masked and test negative to participate. But you were protesting the testing part of it then? You said you were willing to go in masked in order to participate.
Well, mask was I'm sorry to interrupt you. It was a requirement of the city, actually. So the masking wasn't even WSD requirement.
It sounds like it did become part of the WSA.
Vaccine or negative test to be required for convention. That was January 3rd.
Yes. Yeah, not convention.
So you were willing to mask up because that was required, but you were unwilling to test negative in order to go into the particular events and things. But you knew ahead of time. So you were choosing to protest, and I wouldn't want to mask either, and I voted not to mask, so I don't argue that, but it's not up to you to protest on the district's dollar. If you wanted to protest, you should do it on your own dime. That's how I feel about it.
Okay.
And I wouldn't pay for a plane ticket if I was gonna get there and refuse to wear a mask, knowing that that's the rule.
It's fine.
Would you have gone if you had to pay for the hotel?
I wanted to go, yes.
No, that wasn't the question. Would you have paid out of your pocket
to go to
for the registration and the hotel if you knew you were going in?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that because I guess it hasn't come up that way. But I mean, there's other training events I drive to, and I've never asked for mileage reimbursement or anything like that. So, I mean, there hasn't been.
Mileage reimbursement, Troy, is minuscule. I said $800, and I was corrected, and I was basing that on I believe the specials, art and FIAD and whatnot, get on the order of $800. But I believe the cost was in excess of $1,000.
I'm not sure what the exact cost was. I'm sure Jill has the answer to that.
So registration and hotel was $946.47.
Okay.
Was registration and hotel. No meals, mileage. You haven't submitted any for reimbursement.
No, I did not.
So would you have paid $946 to protest?
And sometimes.
No. Not sometimes. Would you have?
Here's a question. I guess what you're asking me is something that's really conjecture at this point, so I don't know the answer to that. If it was something I was truly convicted, yes, I have put myself out there financially and personally to do things. I don't know for this particular case because, once again, it's conjecture. But
so you're not willing to spend $946 of your own money.
I said it's conjecture.
But you're willing to spend $946 of taxpayer money.
Once again, it's conjecture.
Excuse me,
Well,
Mr. Osmanowski.
You did spend.
No, we're having a discussion now. It's not time.
I understand you're having a discussion. I have a question on that
No,
discussion.
it's
Dealing
public
with-
comment time.
Who
No.
picked him as the alternate?
So Troy, back to this.
He did not make clear that he was unwilling to fully conform to the requirements because he was unwilling to conform to the requirement of testing before going in. They asked him if he knew the requirements. He said he was aware of them. He never indicated to anybody that he was not going to agree to conform to the testing portion of it. If he had said that, they would have asked somebody else to do it.
Well, and he wasn't.
Okay, I'm just going to make it clear. The board had voted to have Tom Epps as our representative in the delegate assembly. I was representing Region 6. I could have had two voters, but I think it's better to have the representative of our district in the room. Anyone is available to observe the process of the delegate assembly, but you just get so many, one school gets a representative in there. And when Tom had the medical emergency and was taken by ambulance, we knew he wouldn't be able to do that. And again, surprising me, again, you said you were willing to mask up. You were not masked up when I met you at the Wisconsin Center. And I said, what's going on? You know, you can vote virtually. It does not cost any money. You did not have to have a registration to vote virtually. And you connected virtually.
I just need to be very clear. The fact that Troy served as the delegate assembly duplicate had nothing to do with you going there not following the procedures, because you were already in Milwaukee when you were asked to be the delegate assembly person. So that is a moot point. You were already there, already aware of the expectations, and so I just don't want to confuse matters. The fact that you were asked to step into that role had nothing to do with you already being there and already being aware of it. So
And
I don't want to
could have done
cloud
that.
issues.
Anybody could do that from home.
Correct.
I did it virtually
Or I could
before.
have represented the district since I was in the delegate assembly as an official.
The bottom line is, I feel that it was fully clear what the requirements were to participate. You made the conscious decision not to take all of those measures. You didn't have to be vaccinated, you had to be tested. I had to do that for a meeting in the fall for a regional meeting, because I'm not vaccinated either. But if I knew that I was not willing to agree to all of those steps, I would have said, no, I'm not going, so that the district wasn't going to lose all of that money. It is unethical. The bottom line is it's unethical. You have every right to stand up for your point of view. I fully support it. You could have done that on your own dollar in a different way.
Appreciate the comment.
So Troy, I'm going to ask, will you pay back the district $946.47?
I will do what the board asks me to do. That's
No,
what
Troy, this is
that's,
not.
No, that's what it boils down to.
Is this to further your martyrdom?
No, I'm not trying to further anything. I'm just trying to say this is the slippery slope that we started. We started this 2 years ago, and it wasn't this board. It was basically this board followed suit in it. We've taken so many people.
Let's get back to the WASB.
So why do you keep interrupting me? I point of order here, please.
No.
May I finish my statement?
Let's stick to the agenda item.
This is what we're talking about.
Convention.
This is what we're talking about. The agenda.
We're talking about the convention, Troy.
We're talking about we're isolating people based on what they were willing to put, what they're willing to do. Are we not talking about that? Are we talking about?
This was not our decision. This was a decision that was required in order to attend. Out of 3,500 people there, how many were turned away?
I have no idea. I know I was personally, but.
One.
So you know that as a
I know that
WASB
as a
board
fact.
member?
9 people chose to test because just for out of safety and wanted to make sure, and one forgot to bring documentation. So there were 10 people who chose to do the rapid testing privately in the little side, and one person was turned away for non-compliance, and that was you.
And there was rapid testing available at the convention?
Yes, there were 3 spots, but like I said, 10 people altogether chose to do that.
Okay.
Well, we all received the letters from the couple people that in town, and they were very adamant that it is a total breach of board ethics, and they feel that you should pay that back. And thinking about that, I guess I feel that, I do feel that way also.
And Troy, I'll point out, it wasn't many months ago when you wanted to, how did you term it? You wanted to not spend any taxpayer dollars on WSB.
True.
Right? And this
I wanted to remove our membership program.
And so what you did is you gave some of our tax dollars to WASB to no effect. Right? We as a district didn't get anything out of it.
Unfortunately, that was unfortunate. I did want to have a participation in it, yes. Because I did want to get something out of it. That was my intention, yes.
But how did you expect to participate when you weren't willing to follow the protocols?
I
Did you just think they were magically gonna let you do it anyway?
I was hoping so, yes. Because here's the thing, I mean, it's whenever you're ostracized from a group, you're going to try to want to get back in any way you can. So this is what it boils down to. And I know you guys don't agree with the method I took, basically because I wanted to go, I wanted to be there. I did it. I wasn't allowed because of protocols that I knew I was aware of. I'm not arguing the fact that I wasn't aware of them. It's not about a question about that. It's about, for me, it's about doing what I think is best for this district and the constituents that voted me in here.
But what you do that's best for this district is done in this room. It's not done at the convention.
But the convention has basically when we voted on the delegate gets lobbied to the state
Yep,
senate.
and anybody can vote as that delegate.
But how else it affects there, because there's several networking opportunities going on in there. I was not allowed to do those. I did basically, and another thing is too is there's a lot of contractors that do business in this room indirectly, and part of that is understanding what their processes are and what they're selling, obviously, and those things I wasn't allowed to engage in either. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that doesn't necessarily directly reflect you, but it influences what happens here. So. And the last year there was a virtual convention as well, and so there was an option to go anyway. So.
Well,
what was that?
Last year in 2021, there was no convention that was taken in person, correct? It was all virtual.
We did, yes, there was some time.
Right, in 2021, yes.
So, did you take it virtually last year? I'm just curious.
I did watch, yeah. I watched the open, well, what they offered, it was much more limited scope, obviously, so. I did watch the president,
It
John.
was important from all of the associations to offer the in-person in a safe way. That was clear by all the members.
Well, and there's certain things that we do. For instance, let's take flying right now. We know that we cannot get on an airplane without a mask, and I couldn't get on an airplane to go to Italy without a negative test. I knew that, so I had to decide, do I want to go or do I not? And I said, yes, so I followed the rules. And I think that pertains to this also. If you want to go, yes, you wanted to go, for sure, I can see that. But you've got to follow those rules, otherwise it's not going to work.
The difference was, for me, it was more of a being barred from participation. That is something that I think that we have to be careful with, and it applies to everything in this room and outside this room. And that's where it comes into. I have no intention of wasting district money of any kind. I think anyone that understands where my principles lie, they will know that. And not everybody understands that in the same way.
But Troy, you wasted $946.
I understand the money. And as I said, if the board wishes me to repay it, I will do so. I just want the board to say that. That's what I want.
The sad thing is
I want
that
you
we
to.
have to ask,
Okay.
or
Our
that
taxpayers want you to.
that we have to vote on it, and that you won't just step up and do the right thing. You knew that you were taking a chance when you went down there that you would be barred from participation, and if that was the result, then all of this money was flushed down the toilet.
That's a
And
perception,
it's
yes.
not our money to waste.
No, it's not our money.
We have
I respect this
fiscal
district's money.
responsibility to this district and to the taxpayers in this community. So all these people that you represent on the board, that's their money that you flushed down the toilet.
That's one way to look at it, yes. But I don't
Just
see that.
note number 9 on a code of ethics.
Mhm.
Avoid being placed in a position of conflict of interest, among some other things, but that's the biggest thing that
I guess
points out to me.
If you define the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Avoid being placed in a position of conflict of interest.
I don't see the conflict of interest here, but I don't.
You put your personal beliefs at a conflict of interest with the taxpayers.
You know, understanding a lot of the parents who felt restricted and isolated in during the mitigation of this own board, I don't foresee that's not every person's.
I think if you were to take a poll of the
We did take a
community
Go ahead.
and just ask the question, regardless of what we feel personally about masking, how you handled this situation and how they feel about that money, it would be different. I know that there's people in this community who don't like the way the masking thing happened this year at school. They don't like the way that the participation was handled, and I understand that. But even if a person, I'm sure that there are many people in this community who, even if they were opposed to masking, would disagree with the way that you handled this.
That's fine. I think the opposite is also true, but that's okay. That's a matter of not for us to choose from, and how people in the community perceive us. That's for them to decide on.
Yeah, I guess, I'd like to hear from Tom and Ann as well.
Well,
I'd like to add.
personally, if I was in that situation, I wouldn't financially want to repay the district, but I would feel that it's definitely my responsibility to repay the district. I mean, going in, you knew what was required of you. And why did you, I'm having a hard time understanding. I hear what you're saying when you made that decision, but I'm having a hard time understanding as a board member, as a member of our team, why you made the decision the way you did. That's my personal difficulty with the situation, and I would repay the district. And I feel that's your responsibility to repay the district.
And I think this, you can look at that broader thing, as Amy said, views about everything, but this is an isolated incident. Again, we don't have to say that you knew what was happening when you went down. I mean, simple. Okay, you got a sign on a door front that says, no shirt, no shoes, no service. No mask, no vaccine or a test. No entry. You had to have known that. And I know you were talked about what the consequences could be. And to go down there with that attitude that I'm going to fight this thing. Why couldn't you just get a test, a rapid test down there? Because you don't believe in it? It's just a swab, man. Just a swab, and you can go in and be free in there. But I don't know, maybe it was just your mentality of the issue, and I know you're bringing all this other stuff about, denying this and that and everything here at the school. But yeah, there were rules here, and something so simple to do. I can say that, and I know you don't necessarily agree that's going to be simple.
You can say it. You can say what you want to say.
Because with my medical issue, I feel absolutely horrible that occurred while I was there. And I'm ready to pay back the district as well. And I made the proper choices to get in there. So let's get out our checkbooks together. Or just you. I don't know. Because I know I didn't. I mean, more came out of my pocket because of that doggone convention. But anyway, I mean, it's just ethical thing to do because you knew that this could happen.
Right. No one's questioning your intent, honestly. So you're questioning mine, which is okay, but no one's questioning yours. So I don't expect you to pay back anything personally, so So that's all. I guess it's up to the board to decide. I mean, I will abstain on this. So
To say to you, Troy, pay back nearly $1,000. I am sure that that's financially painful.
It's okay,
but it is. That is hard for somebody to just pay back $1,000. But you know what? It's not right for this district to have to do that either. And I'm sure that you're careful with your own money. You should have been just as respectful and careful with this district's money as well.
And what's telling to me, Troy, is you can't say, yes, I would have spent 946 of my own dollars to go down there and do that.
Knowing that you wouldn't, there's a good chance you wouldn't get to participate.
Depends on, okay, so here's why it's difficult, because I wouldn't have chose the WASB convention. So if I wanted to protest something and I wanted to spend $1,000 on it, I wouldn't have chose that. That wouldn't
But you
have
did.
You did choose it. You chose it with the district's
You
money.
Absolutely. You did choose to protest on $1,000, but not your own money.
Like I said, I will, if the board finds that it's necessary, I have no problem doing it. So in other words, what I'm asking is if the board wants to do something with that, it's fine. As a constituents, I've heard both sides. You guys have not heard the other side. There's a lot of stuff going on on the other side too that I don't share all that stuff with you guys.
Well,
because it doesn't get sent to my school district email. There's stuff going around that a lot of people are afraid of the school district email, so therefore they won't send it to my school district email. They send it to me personally on Facebook message. About basically what I stand for, the principles that I support. Yes. About the convention in general, there's been there has been some people that have said
action is needed on the convention issue.
It hasn't been there, but here's the thing: I don't want. I'm just saying, you guys hear always from one side, and I hear other sides sometimes too, and therefore, I'm okay with my decision. And like I said, if the board is not, then it's fine.
So do you want us to take a vote? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what it comes down to. Unfortunately, that's what's necessary.
Unless you're willing to say, I'll pay it back, we'll have to take a vote.
Okay, and then I recommend you guys. Yeah, if you guys wish to do that, it's fine.
Okay, is there
So I
someone,
make the motion that we take a vote at this point in time.
is there someone to make a motion on the WASB convention follow-up conversation?
So I will put forth the motion that Troy repays the district in the amount of $946.47 to reimburse the district for funds spent on the WSB convention.
I'm just going back to the Banner Journal. You want a correction? Do you want to do a correction?
Yeah, if you wish. Actually, I do want to do a correction for not being able to vote. That was my mistake. I did do that. Yes, that was my fault. I apologize for that. And I will do that. I will write that up after this meeting, and I'll send it to the Banner Journal.
That the Banner Journal did not make the mistake, that it was your mistake.
Thank you for doing that, Troy.
As far as the voting aspect, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, that was my mistake.
Okay, a motion has been made.
I'll second it.
Marty, do you want to read what you heard?
Brad made a motion to request that Troy Webb reimburse the district $946.47 for his attendance to the WASB convention.
Do we want to include a time frame in which this happens?
I want Troy to do it in the time frame which he's comfortable doing.
Okay.
So I would say by the end of this calendar year. Is that? I mean, I don't know.
No, I appreciate what you're saying.
And I don't want to discuss your personal finances.
No, I said, and I understand what you're saying. That's fine. If you just want to make it open-ended, almost in that sense, I appreciate that. Yes.
Should I just clarify? Yeah, thank you. By the end of 2022 or by the end of this school year? Because when you're in education, we talk 2 years.
Budget year.
Budget year ends June 30th.
Okay.
Or are you talking calendar year 2022?
So, Troy, again, I don't. Is June 30th okay?
It's fine if you wish that. Yeah.
And by the end of the
fiscal year,
school fiscal year. Yes, thank you for. I'm used to working calendars.
Okay, there has been a motion and a second. Any more discussion or questions? We'll do a roll call vote on this. Brad?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Mary Jo?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Troy?
Abstain.
Mary Jo, yes. Motion carried. Now we'll go into a discussion on our board self-evaluation and the norms as a follow-up from our last week's meeting. Thank you, Tom. Good luck. Any discussion of what Cheryl's involvement with facilitating us through that process?
Well, it's good to have somebody do that so that you can participate and not feel like you're getting anything out of it. You know, we're not just always being the facilitator of something like that.
I appreciated her getting us started on it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we need her, I don't really need her to facilitate anymore. I think we can probably, I feel like we can go on our own from here, but I don't know how everyone else feels.
It was nice to have an outside influence talking about board development. That was actually, I did appreciate that a lot. That was helpful.
I like all the samples you brought.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the samples were good, but just having another perspective outside of, sometimes we live in a closed little group here sometimes, and it's nice to have it outside. And also, like I said at the meeting, it's nice to have other people or other groups, how they do things, how they call their norms, of how that basically can pertain to us. That was helpful. As far as furthering it, I'm open to either way. If the board wishes to do it internally or externally, I think it'd be fine.
Yeah, I can go either way on that one as well. I think Cheryl gained us a lot of ground.
I think she got us to the point where we can see some very clear categories where we'd like to have a norm, and maybe we just need to do a little wordsmithing, so to speak, to have it, the way we want it to be.
I was really glad when Tom clarified ethics versus norm, because I was struggling with that same thing, that it seemed like the same thing. Now it's the we instead of the I.
Right.
Anne, what did you think?
It was nice, it was good input from her. I think we can continue on our own. I don't know necessarily that we need her back to
I'm
continue.
open either way, but I think.
We started the conversation before the election, just because we felt there was some dysfunction going on, and we certainly value Amy's input and her time here with us, and she brings a lot of good grounding.
And 9 years of experience.
Yes, yeah, lots of experience. So I think this is going to be a continuing conversation and self-evaluation throughout. I know a few years we were doing self-evaluation of our meetings every time we had a meeting, but it was just, it ended up not being a real, it just wasn't important for us at that time we just didn't go through it all the time.
It wasn't very meaningful data.
We just checked through, and so I think it is
meeting.
time for us to continue on with something else and further work on this.
Will we finish this before Amy?
That's what I'm thinking would be a nice thing, to have some norms developed before our new board is.
Can we do, I don't know how long that closed session will be on Monday. Is there any time after that we can work this at all? I don't know how long it would be, as long as
We could at least put it on the agenda for discussion and look at the results that we got from last week.
And I think especially if we were to take the time individually to look at them again and kind of each of us come up with
Some ideas.
just some focusing on, really pinpointing what we'd like to see, and we can make a lot of progress, I think.
She gave us a summary of what we had said earlier. I was on the board before, I believe, right, on the whiteboard.
Yep, it wasn't really grouped as much as
No,
I thought she said it was going to be,
She
but
felt
you can
like she really
extrapolate
kind of
stuff.
created categories in which some of those things fit, and like if there's 4 or 5 things in a category, I think we can just kind of try and perfect them, at least in our own minds, and then bring them together and talk about them.
So what I'm hearing that we'll do some self-study before our special meeting in April.
Would you want the closed session first or this discussion first?
I think the closed session first, because that's the priority.
Did we decide on the date officially then? For the
April
meeting?
4th.
April 4th, yes. That's what you guys decided, or everybody,
Well-
majority decided to do, or, I wasn't sure.
On
because
future agenda items, I was going to ask about that.
Okay, fair enough, okay, so,
Well, while we're here, though.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about it. Okay, April 4th is our special meeting for superintendent evaluation.
On April 4th?
April 4th is what you guys want to do? Okay. I wasn't probably going to be able to make that, so that's why.
Oh, 2 weeks, sorry, thank God.
Is it a time issue for that day, or is it the day?
Yeah, it's an employment issue,
so-
that's all. I mean, really, almost any other day would have worked perfectly except for that one, like, darn it. So it's just a personal thing, but if the board wants to go with it, that's fine. I just won't be able to attend that.
Setting norms is hard, though. I mean, you'd really like everyone to be
Yeah.
there for that
Agreed.
conversation.
I wasn't
Does
a-
Tuesday the 5th work better? And moving it later would not help, right? Just to be clear, because we have it at 5:30, and so later would not help.
We're
It would
having
be, it'd
policy.
be closer to 7 would be okay, but then we're pushing it pretty late at that point. So late would help, yes, but it just gets pretty late pretty fast, that's all.
So could you look at your calendars for Tuesday, April 5th?
The only thing is
That's the
that's
day.
the election
That's
day.
the election day.
Well, do you guys have some place to be? How long does it take to cast your ballot? Come on.
I'm not saying it's
Yeah,
bad,
there's
I'm
a
just saying
PTO
it's,
meeting that night.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess we chose the 5:30 time because of policy committee, but certainly we could go with our traditional 6 o'clock
He
time.
said 7 is the earliest he could be
I
back.
can do 7 because I'll be in lacrosse that day, that's the
Yeah.
thing, so.
So that's a late.
But could we be done with, well, we probably want to be there for the evaluation too.
I prefer if I could, that's all, I mean. I'm not trying to be inconvenient, but it's just one of those things.
Oh, no.
And if it works for everyone else, I get that too.
We're running out of time.
The next April meeting is April 18th though, is that when we would actually, is that correct? April
Yes.
18th, we did. So we would have the 11th, would that work for everybody or no? Is that too late? That's the next Monday and I'm sure I could do 5:30 at that time if you wish, so. Just the following Monday.
I am booked until 6 p.m. on the 11th, which
Okay.
no harm, I mean, 6 p.m. isn't that late either, it's a normal time.
Well, do we need you for the beginning part of that meeting? You'll have provided the information to us.
You usually don't meet without me there. Usually there's conversation first and then I get excused, so,
Okay, great.
I mean,
6 o'clock.
right now it's to save the date for another meeting, and so if that changes, we could schedule it for 6, and if that meeting changes, we could move it forward to 5:30. Would that be okay?
So we're saying move the meeting on the 4th to the 11th?
We are not hearing from Mr. Epps, but I'm hearing that it works for everyone else.
So looking at it on April 11th,
Correct. I think it's hard to set norms if you don't have everyone there.
Yeah.
right, at 5:30?
Or 6.
6 o'clock, we're gonna start scheduling it at and see where it goes.
6 on the 11th, okay.
And so we are canceling the special board meeting for April 4th. We will just have a policy. Is that accurate? Okay.
Well, thank you guys, appreciate that.
So that meeting may go later than the initially scheduled 8 o'clock. Because we're gonna take extra.
So I'm gonna make a 3-hour chunk so none of you are confused by it.
A more accurate reflection, possibly.
Okay, and do some self-study on the self-evaluation and norms at the time, and then we'll have superintendent evaluation information sent out in advance for review as well. Any more discussion on that? Okay, we'll move on to focus on purpose.
Great. So Mrs. Simonson, in addition to her work at Red Creek, is also our Title VI coordinator, which means that she facilitates that grant through our federal entitlements. And so she does just an awful lot of work coordinating professional development for staff. She is our liaison between the Parent Advisory Committee with the Ho-Chunk Nation, as well as the Johnson O'Malley Group, and just really does some great work. So I asked her to give you guys an update because I think it's been a really long time since we've talked about the Title VI grant.
She probably needs to share.
Is it,
What?
Go, on our drive, it's a lot.
Oh,
It's a lot.
she just, I'm sorry, she just shared it today, so I just need to give you rights.
Okay, I appreciate that, because it's easier for me to read on the computer.
She shared it yesterday, I take that back.
Okay.
I added it today.
Okay, fair enough.
So I'll fix it.
Thank you, that's all
Yeah.
it was. It's nice to follow.
Take it away.
So things have been very positive. I've been in this role for the last 7 years and have really appreciated my work with the nation, and specifically Dr. Bethany Redbird has been my partner in crime in this work from the nation's perspective. If you just want to go to the next slide, Jill. So with the Title VI grant, for the last 7 years, these have been our two primary goals. The first is to increase the student achievement with our Native American students and to increase Native American cultural awareness throughout the district are the two main goals. So anytime any proposals or requests are brought to the grant, we always try to consider where does it fit underneath these two goals. And so with that in mind, our budget for this year was just a little over $87,000. That figure is 100% determined by the number of students that have completed a 504 form. It's 506. 506, yes, 506. Oh, yes, all good. Not that.
We don't know the difference.
Yes.
I do, and it's a big one. So.
It is a big one. It is a big one. Sorry about that. So 506 form, and so there are families that choose not to fill out that form. It's simply putting their tribal number on there. So it's just a one time in their whole career in Black River Falls that we collect that. So that's what that amount is based on. And so some of the activities, some of them are ongoing. They're activities that we've done all 7 years in my role, but some we keep trying to find new ways to support our Native students as well. So the district attendance interventionist, if you remember, Jenna Rosequist was a part-time person in that role of just Native students. Now we've added the district support, and so it's a full-time position for Francesca Bird is in that role, but Title VI still pays a portion of it, so she helps with the attendance of all students in the district. We also thinking about really giving those little students as much support as possible. We are a little bit disproportionate in the number of Native students qualifying for some of our Tier 3 interventions. So with that all in mind, the grant is paying a portion of a Forest Street interventionist. So really catch them when they're young. We also this year are supporting our Native high school students on the band and choir trip that they're going to be taking to Disney. Without this support, many of those students would not be able to attend. Graduation stoles, this has been I don't know how long this tradition has been happening, but Eunice Winnicek has been making these stoles. You've all seen them at graduation, they're gorgeous. I even have like a 20-page document of all the little tiny measurements because she said, I won't be here forever and somebody needs to know how to make these stoles. So I have those in my files just in case, but she's wonderful. Then under the cultural awareness strategies, and I'll be talking a little bit more about this soon, the mini powwow video series. You all watched the drum earlier this year, which was phenomenal. I have a new one to share with you tonight. This year, we also went out and contracted to have a drum made with our high school Native boys. And so that drum is now at the high school. The high school also had a moccasin cultural event. Also, there was the cultural day, I believe it was last year at the football game, and so I didn't include that. Ongoing, we have flag raising ceremony in all buildings in November. At Red Creek, we have our Three Sisters Garden, has a little garden shed that you may have seen. For the last 2 or 3 years it's taken, the Illustrators Guild at the middle school, along with their art teacher, Amy Olson, they illustrated this Fry Bread book. And so then Title VI also supported printing the first version. So I have a copy for all of you tonight, and there's a little flyer. So, and please let me know, we still have lots and lots of these available. If you know of places where there are young children, that's our goal, is to get this book in the hands of as many young children as possible. So just let me know and I can get you more copies. We also have our mini powwows that historically we had, but unfortunately with COVID we hadn't. That's where this video series came into play, and it also was wonderful to take the oral histories and turn it into a piece that could be passed on over time. And then there's always miscellaneous educator requests. Sometimes they go off and go to different conferences, and they find different Native authors or books that reflect field trips, ideas. And so then I always have those requests coming in throughout the year as well. Any questions about some of those activities? Okay. So you watched the drum, and tonight I would like to share with you, if you want to click the link, The Importance of Language is the next video.
Work as the linguist for the Ho-Chunk Wazijachi Language Division. When I think about the Ho-Chunk language and how important it is, I go back to the stories that have been shared about where the language came from. You know, the fact that, you know, there's an actual story about the Creator breathing this into the first people, and that this was a language we were given to speak not only with each other, but also with the Creator and with the spirits and with everything that was created along with us, and that it's sacred. And, you know, even the fact that Ho-Chunk, the people of the sacred voice, refers to that story and refers to this language that we were given. That's the name for our people. I think it's such a cornerstone of our identity. You know, it's such a testament to our people, to our identity, to our sovereignty. It's our language. This was given to us, and we exist as Ho-Chunk people in part because of this language. So that's why I feel it's so incredibly important to preserve and to speak and to use on a daily basis as much as possible. Well, the language right now, it's in a very critical state. I think we don't know for sure. It's impossible to know for sure, but best estimate is there are fewer than 50 remaining native speakers of the language. A vast majority, all of our native speakers to our knowledge, are over the age of 70 at this point. There might be some that are in their late 60s, but they're all at the elderly side of the range. And again, there's fewer than 50. There might be closer to 30 at this point. So we're at a very critical stage as far as language preservation goes and moving forward. Elders started to notice the loss of language happening, you know, in the 80s, even in the 70s. They started to notice that children were not speaking it anymore, or it wasn't as common to hear as they were used to. So I know on the legislative side that they started putting money away for a language revitalization effort. The division started in 1994. I believe Kenny Funmaker Wanahita was one of the people that was instrumental in getting it going. I think he was the first director. But there were a lot of speakers. There were a lot of people that were involved at the time, not just in the language division, but also within the government. And it kind of took off from there. I think all of what we're doing is thinking into the future. So there's a number of different steps that we can be taking. A is learning as much as possible, and people taking time to learn and become as highly proficient as they possibly can in the language so that we can continue to carry it on. We're going to get to a stage very soon where we don't have any native speakers. You know, no one likes to think about it, no one likes to talk about it, but that's the reality of the situation, and we're going to be there sooner rather than later. So in addition to individuals learning as much as they possibly can and using it as much as they can, We also have to create archives of the language from our native speakers as much as possible. I think we need to capture as much of their knowledge as we possibly can in a meaningful way, so that we can use it, so that we can draw on it, so that not just our generation, but primarily these generations that are coming after us can reawaken the language. And by reawaken, I mean eventually get to a point where there are native speakers being created again, where there are people who speak Ho-Chunk in their home with their infants, with their newborns, and they raise them in the language and they become native speakers again. This is your language. If you're a Ho-Chunk, this is still your language. Now take every step you can to speak it. It's still your language. It's there for the taking. It's there when you're ready for it. And there are always going to be people that will be willing to sit with you and work with you on the language. So it's like a marathon. It's not a sprint, and that this is a lifelong journey. This is not something it's not a course that ends and then you're done and you're fluent in a language. You just got to keep learning, and you got to keep using it, and you got to push yourself as hard as you can.
So I was told that the next video entitled Maple Syrup is finished, and so we'll roll that out in April. This video was just sent to everyone in the district, and I've asked that all teachers present it on Friday. There's a flyer giving a little background of it, and then hopefully that's how we did it the last time, to ensure that all students saw it on the same day when it worked for them. So you can go to the next slide. So these are some pictures of some of the events that I mentioned. And just last week, the admin team met with the RTI Center and some representatives, and they shared this culture card, which was unbelievable, because we in the district, I know as myself as a teacher in the district, have always wanted like a basic, give me the basic etiquette when it comes to our Native people. And this was created at the national level, and so there's hundreds of different tribes across the nation, but collectively they came up with some basic etiquette pieces, talking about spirituality and tribal sovereignty and what does that mean, facts and myths. And so, which I love, because in Black Earth Falls, not all of our Native students are Ho-Chunk, and so we need to remember that and honor all the tribes that they come from. So I also have one of these for you as well. So, and I think that was it, unless you have some questions.
Thanks for updating us. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you ever get one?
Thank you.
Could you put the extra ones, like in, don't families get?
I've got a sign one. I was at that.
Do you know of any other family that could use a book?
I'm sure.
Do families get it? They have to be baby, like from the hospital.
That would
sometimes
be-
they have gift baskets. That would be something that's a great idea.
The group also talked about putting them at like in every waiting area in Jackson County, you know, but they've all put those magazines and things away. So I have some saved for that.
I know some of the doctors at home do a book with every well checked.
Thank you for those ideas.
I'm sure they'll give two books.
Very much. Thank you so much, Laura.
Any questions for Laura? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just reach out anytime if you have any questions.
Still no employment recommendations?
Nope, none that you need to approve, but I would just want to celebrate Jody Gavron for a moment. Jody has been teaching music for us I was just with her last week and asked her how many years it's been, and I think she's, I don't remember the Do you remember? 20 years, that's what was going to be my guess. And if you've ever been to a kindergarten Christmas concert, honestly, like parents always say this, I can't get my own 5-year-old to do these things, and yet she gets 120 of them to do the same thing at the same time. And
she's so calm.
So she is incredibly calm, always kind, and so incredibly thoughtful. And the other thing that I really stands out to me about Jody is like she shares her gifts so freely. Whenever the high school has a music concert or something, she's always there willing to accompany. When the community has the falls players and they're putting on a show, she's down in the orchestra pit. She's just a really neat lady. I appreciate her so much. So she's ready to retire. Both of her kids are over in the Fox Cities. You may recall she lost her husband a few years ago, and so she's anxious to move to the Fox Cities to be closer to her kids. So we will miss her greatly, but excited for her in this next step.
I always call her the kindergarten whisperer.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Amazing.
Yep.
Move on to the 7.2, human growth and development.
Just shared the proposal to the board that was developed by the committee. We made the changes we went from topics. Let me scroll down a little further into the 7th grade piece. Right there to defining those words, so be more specific. And then at the end, we removed some of the stuff about professional development. And there's another thing. Just the discussion around the guidance counselor, in 9th and 10th grade, whether or not they could take health at 9th or 10th. It needs to be one or the other just because of scheduling issues.
We reviewed this last month and delayed the action until the changes were made. Is there any comment? Are there any comments or questions?
Just one clarification. That committee recommended that the board review this on a 3-year cycle. I'm bringing that policy change to the policy committee. So that human growth and development doesn't make board policy, but you made that recommendation. So I will bring that to policy committee on April 4th for them to adjust the current board policy to require that 3-year eval.
And Jamie and Troy were on that. Anything to add?
Nope, I think that any tweaking from the wording, we brought that up at the last meeting,
Yeah.
so.
And I think it's when we looked at here, yeah, I
Yep.
think this is what we wanted to, the committee was looking to recommend to the board.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the human growth and development?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
She's going to stay right there for the next one.
Okay, and then success.
Based education.
So just in an ongoing way, we will be talking about standards-based education at each meeting. And to the point that one of the people during public comment had talked about what really matters is the rollout and how we are going to be doing standards-based education here. So we're going to kind of start from a zoomed out perspective of just kind of like that philosophy stuff, and we're going to just each month talk about the principles. So 2 months ago, we talked about the principle in standards-based grading that there's multiple opportunities for students to be exposed to learning. And that's nothing new in education. That's something that has been going on for a long period of time. We know that not everyone learns everything the first time, and that we need to, have that repeated learning. So a lot of what's happening in standards-based grading is just knowing, and standards-based education is just taking into practice all the best things that we know about education and really streamlining it and getting super organized in our planning and our thinking around how we teach and how we assess. So this is another grading principle that's really just common sense, and everyone who's been to school, I think, can kind of relate to this. So the principle is that we give individual grades for collaborative work. So I don't know if you've ever been part of a group where you might have been the person that had to do all the work, or maybe you were the person that kind of watched the other people do the work, and then everyone got the same grade. And for some people that was greatly on Yahoo, and for other people you were like resentful because you did all the work, right? And so-and-so is rode your coattails. So that's something that's kind of a common thing in school that we can all relate to. So, but
the reason this principle really helps us understand standards-based grading more is that that's not the point in the grade in standards-based grading. The point in the grading is that we want to be able to communicate how each child has done on the standard, where their learning is at exactly. To what degree does each student know the standard or know the topic? So it's interesting. We're still doing a lot of the same similar things. Like collaboration is still really important, right? Like we're still putting kids in groups. We're still having them collaborate. We're teaching them how to collaborate and talking about behavior and collaboration. But then when it comes time to assess, you might assess through a reflection piece at the end. So you really know as a teacher which student knows what at the end. So it's not about the product, right? Or about who does the work. It's about the learning that took place. So this principle is a really nice way of really thinking about this. So it's not just about effort or getting your work done, it's about how much you have learned. And so you can work through the different bullets that kind of helps talk about those pieces, but it's just another principle that helps us understand this. So we'll continue talking about the principles, and then we'll get more and more detailed in what exactly the rollout looks like. That's kind of our big idea. If there's any questions on that?
One thing I like is including self and peer assessments, and I work with a lot of non-traditional students who are in various leadership roles, and that's something that still we must teach at every level, and we just are not comfortable giving peer feedback, I've learned. So yeah, we can learn that in the K-12 system, that's going to go a long ways.
Thank you for that, yeah.
And I understand third graders are not necessarily ready to give effective peer feedback.
Oh, they'll tell you.
Honest, though. They're very honest. Whether it's effective is different. Yeah.
Effectiveness, true. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to monthly expenditures, and you received those in your packets. Any items you'd like to have questions on for discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Second. Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Facility update. It sure was nice going through the high school.
Sure was. Sure was. The two owners' reports were included in your packet. If you had the opportunity to look through, and if you have any questions, I'm open to that. We have our bi-weekly meeting tomorrow. We're getting to the point where 4th Street is interested in knowing when or do we have to get out of the spaces that they're remodeling and start making those detailed plans. And so, of course, as you heard from the crew, they will be as respectful as they can be to the timelines of when we have kids there, yet understanding that every contractor wants to get their big projects, or every district wants their work done during those summer months. And so we work hard to try to be accommodating. For example, Melanie was just saying that maybe those last couple of days, those two teachers that are down in those locker rooms, they could start moving their stuff out into another space for summer storage. They could start some demolition right away that next day. The stage area, I mean, some of those bigger projects we're going to need to be as helpful as possible while still remembering we have kids here. So.
The only question I had is on 4th Street where they were talking about that walk-in cooler, the 8-month lead time, that maybe they were going to rebid that with someone else. Do you know if they did that?
We'll find out tomorrow,
Okay.
So I can certainly let you know that.
And not related to the remodel, but a facility question I had, the Lunda Theater, where do we land on lights, et cetera, with that?
Still working on that, working with Justin Doherty.
Yep.
And he was going to talk to a couple different companies that do that, and we just haven't gotten back together on that. So, yeah, I know we're going, but not finished.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the budget preview.
So we talk each year that we are never going to ask you to take action on something the first time that you see it. And so we are certainly in a budget reduction mode. And so we'll talk you through this first piece. And you'll notice that at the bottom, we are still definitely in the red. So that means that we are not yet at a balanced budget proposal for you. So I'm just going to walk you through briefly these pieces. So the top one, increases for salary and fringe benefits. I'll tell you, historically, we have started with a 2% 2% salary increase. We are no longer certified as unions and have negotiating bargaining units, and so we are not bound to CPI. However, there are some districts who still have negotiating units who are bound by that. We have taken the 2% increase over since we created this model. We were hopeful that health insurance was going to come in lower. They were hoping for 5%. It came in at 8%, which was extremely frustrating. I will tell you that our usage for last year, so you pay in 100% of premiums, our usage for last year was 124% of our premiums. And so we believe that this was a year that our partnership with the co-op really was value added to us, because if we were to have been with our own provider by ourselves, just with our pool, and they spent 24% more money on us than we paid in, chances are very strong that our renewal rate would have been 20-30%. And so this time, the leveling out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of members in the co-op, we think was a real financial advantage to us, but it did create a hole. So some of the pieces, we are still evaluating a possibility of what else could we do with our health insurance plan. So right now we already have a high deductible plan. We're trying to figure out if we increase the deductible, but the district absorbed those costs as opposed to passing them on to the employees. If we increase we're already a high deductible plan. If we make it an even higher deductible plan, that reduces the amount of premium that you pay. Because the higher the deductible, the less the premium. So if we can find a sweet spot that we increase the deductible more, our premium would go down and we would absorb that cost as opposed to passing it on to employees. We may end up with less than an 8% savings. But the problem with that is there's risk involved, because we are predicting how many staff are going to reach that top of the deductible. And so it could turn out better for us with fewer reaching it, or it could turn out worse for us with more reaching it. So there's definitely more risk embedded in that model as opposed to going with the straight 8% increase in premium. We always talk about a new hire to retirement savings, that HRA savings decrease. We know that when we hire a new staff, almost always they're less expensive than somebody that is retiring. Not always, right? As I said before, we have benefited from some people with lots of years of experience coming, and so it's not always a less expensive, but we take into account that most of the time there is a savings to new hire in some positions. There are some positions that absolutely is not the case at all, because the market has absolutely collapsed on some of those teaching areas. The building budget allocation change, you've already approved that based on lower enrollment in the buildings. Their allocations were a little bit less. If you recall, last year we had a lot of conversation about section sizes in all of our grade levels. And so using those exact same guides that we talked about, we believe that there is a reduction of a 4K teacher, 2 reductions of first grade teacher. We need to add a second grade, and we need to reduce a third grade. 6th grade is a completely ESSER funded position. That person did not receive a regular contract. They received a letter of appointment for the 1 year because we knew it was an ESSER. So if you look at this, you would think, okay, there's 4K, 2 first grade, and a third grade. And then the 6th grade, but we're going to take that one off because that was already ESSER funded. And then the adding of a 2nd grade. So if you look at seats on the bus in the district, we are confident that we will not need to use layoff language due to financial reasons, because we think enough seats on the bus will open up. And so, for example, those are those 4 seats. We already are adding 1 to 2nd grade, so then there are 3 displaced staff members. We've had a 5th grade resignation and a 2nd grade resignation already, and so then there was 1 who does not have a seat on the bus. So statutorily, if we are going to non-renew somebody for purely budgetary reasons, they still need to receive that notice by absolute deadline April 30th. So that means by April 18th. If somebody else hasn't left us of their own accord, we will have to have a closed session to talk about preliminary notice of non-renewal. Even after that happens, if another teacher in that pool decides to leave, we have until May 15th to issue final notice of non-renewal. So In talking to the elementary crowd today, we are very confident there will be somebody in that pool leaving, so we don't have to do that. But financially, we need to recoup those savings, and the section sizes that we all agreed on last year make that possible without stretching those sections. And post Act 10, that is the only way to, you used to be able to lay somebody off, or layoff language. That does not exist in teacher contracts anymore. Either their contract is renewed or they are non-renewed. And so that leaves us with no other option. So wanted you, because you see 4 and you think, oh my gosh, that's a lot of pink slips. Not necessarily. We're pretty confident that we will end up with none. The last piece is the floating subs. You may recall that when we were struggling so much to fill spots last year, we ended up hiring a full-time floating sub at the middle school and the high school, and one for the elementary. We are recoding those from Fund 10, our general fund, to our ESSER 3 funds. And so one of our greatest fears of those ESSER positions is we know that those are one-time dollars. And so there are districts all over the place who are working to balance their budget by supplanting a bunch of their work with those ESSER dollars. There has not been a per pupil allocation increase over the last 2 biennium budgets. We are very fearful for that spending cliff that's going to come when the ESSER dollars are no longer available. I've heard a lot of conversation that they think the state legislature recognizes that these one-time funds have been here, and that's why they haven't changed their funding for schools. That's great in philosophy, but we can't staff a building or balance a budget based off of what we think they might possibly do in the next biennium. And so when ESSER goes away, if there's no change, we already have a huge, huge funding cliff to step down. We are concerned about adding to that by moving other Fund 10 expenses to that ESSER fund, so that funding cliff gets even steeper. So, questions, comments, concerns?
Wait and see.
I'm just going to bring up the 2% that we have budgeted for the raises. The current CPI is 7.9. No surprise to you guys, I know. Social Security went up 5.9. Is 2% enough for consideration for our staff?
So every 1% of salaries, that is an additional $126,000. So every 1%, and I'm not saying no, I'm just giving you information. In our last meeting, you had talked about compensation specifically, and so every 1% of salaries is $126,000 across the board. So you just cited some more recent numbers from CPI. End of February, when I was with a bunch of colleagues, it was 4.7. And there were a lot of districts that were working hard saying that they were going to do 4.7. Jill, do you want to explain the difference between how that can look very different from district to district? So you see a headline, like this district is giving 4.7% in increases. It's not necessarily apples to apples.
Right. When Act 10 came into play, we were required to separate salaries to base wages and supplemental wages. Maybe you remember that, anybody who was here then. So base wages were basically somebody at the base lane. The supplemental wages were the lane growth that you had through credits, master's degree, whatever. So that was a different pool of money. When we negotiated with the union at that time, we negotiated on base wages. So any salary increases went on the base. The board got to decide what they wanted to do with supplemental pay, if they wanted to change that or whatever. As Shelley said, we don't negotiate with our teachers anymore. They don't have a bargaining unit to do that. So we haven't had to do that for many, many years. Some districts many still do have a union, and may be negotiating still on that base wages. So 4.7 of what is always my question. What are they giving 4.7% on? The base wages, which could be $20,000 or $30,000 salary, and their $60,000 total salary. So they're not getting it on their full amount of their salary, or is it? There are some districts who are giving it on total amounts too. I was at a conference last week for a couple days and talked to a lot of different people, and a person from Baird who sees a lot of districts. I try to gather a lot of information quickly, and how are they doing that? How can they afford that? Well, not all districts are low spending like we are, is one thing. So they may not have been in the cut mode we've been in for the last, I shouldn't say just cut, but reprioritization mode that we've been in the last several years. If they have a higher per pupil amount. And the other part is a lot of people are using their ESSER funds and creating that funding cliff for their district as well. We've done it on very targeted positions, added interventionists, added instructional coaches that we didn't have before. That's how we're using those dollars. But that's how some of those percent increases are being done.
I guess what I'd have to look at is, are we still competitive in salary with for positions? Because it's tough to get teachers and staff right now. That's what that's what I would base it on, not a percentage.
So there's, interestingly, there's this group from Southwest Wisconsin, Ted, who is trying to put together this new database so that teachers, districts would be able to say, a teacher in this position with this many years of experience, this is the going market value for that teacher. And they have developed this whole comparison in their small region, and now they're inviting the rest of the state to be a part of it, which I think would be really great, except we wouldn't want to compare we have people commute from La Crosse, we don't pay what La Crosse pays. And so we couldn't afford that. But also if you live here, the living expenses aren't what La Crosse is. And so there's differences all across the board. But recognizing the market value of each position would be really interesting for us. In talking to some people about that 4.7% that they just committed to, one of our neighboring districts, they under levy. So they have the authority to levy higher than they currently do. If they decide to do a 4.7, they already have the authority to just levy up to that. We have been locked in as a low spender since '94. We've already made the reductions that are the easy ones. We don't have any of that spending authority. There are, I think we heard this when we were talking about our other referendum, hundreds of districts that go to revenue limit overrides to fund staffing. And so that guy who's running that whole group, he said that they use that whole market value research to talk to their community about paying their teachers, and they passed a referendum for teacher and support staff salaries. I'm not suggesting that we're at the point that we go to referendum. I am not suggesting that. I'm saying it's frustrating when you hear so many other people who have that ability to give those increases, because I say this all the time. We have teachers who drive from Eau Claire. They pass 5 other districts on their way here. We have people who drive from La Crosse. They drive through several other districts to get here. If you want to live here, it's a short drive to 3 other districts, right? And so with the smaller number of people going into education, I'm concerned about a candidate pool. So we can compare our salary schedule, but it doesn't necessarily compare apples to apples, right? So I'm interested in this new research this new group that he's putting together, but it is really hard to compare to neighbors when we aren't all funded at the same level. We, all don't run the same programs. We all don't have the same expenses when it comes to, 500 square miles of busing. It's just really difficult to do that. But as a low spender, we are really feeling that pinch when it comes to salaries, because it grows, right? So if you decide to do something this year, next year, a percentage of a higher number is a higher number, right? So one other strategy that we have heard from others, perhaps you heard last year when it was very, very difficult, challenging year, there were some districts that used their ESSER funds to give a bonus to their staff. I personally didn't feel like that was an appropriate use of those ESSER funds when they're supposed to be targeted at student achievement, closing those gaps. I'm wondering about using some of our ESSER funds, and some districts are doing this as an inflationary one-time payout, because we don't know what will happen with the biennial budget. So it's not a cliff. If we add it to their salary, then it increases the cliff, because every single year the expectation is that they get it, but a one-time inflationary increase, because CPI came in, I can't imagine CPI is going to stay that high. But Amy's story beforehand made me nervous about expect these prices to stay, so maybe I'm wrong, but our funding model can't sustain 4.7 or now 7.9% increases. We just can't sustain that. Our teachers have gotten 2%, and we started this model my second year, so I'm going to say this is the 8th year of the 2% increases. If you look at CPI over those years, there's, I think, 2 years where CPI was below the 2%, and we still gave 2%. That means the other 6 years CPI was above the 2%, and we gave the 2%. And so there's not negotiating units, but people watch, right? Staff watch. They know what the salary schedules look like, and they know what those increases feel like.
And one thing we do have going for us is all the salary work we did last spring.
Yep.
That was
And just a reminder too, it doesn't mean every individual gets 2%, right? It's a pool of dollars, and the salary schedule we developed and the board approved last year is, some people are getting more than that, some people are getting less than that, so it just depends.
Because we're still
involved.
transitioning, right? Yeah.
But we do have to do more than 2%.
I think so.
As much trouble as we are having filling positions right now, we've got what, 5 aid positions already? 5 aid positions open right now? Is it more than that? 4?
Lots of the rest of the group.
Do we need the one-time inflation increase? Tell us more about that.
So we had to create an ESSER 2 plan. We created an ESSER 3 plan. All of those things have been done already. But there are pieces, for example, in this year and the next 2 years, Red Creek was supposed to have another instructional coach. This year we hired somebody. They left us the week before school started. We could not find somebody for that highly qualified position, so that is empty. So in our ESSER plan, there's the salary and benefits for that instructional coach. In addition, forestry, there was budgeted for an behavior interventionist. During hiring season last year, we didn't know if we were going to receive the mental health grant, and so we had Amy's salary in ESSER as a placeholder, and we needed to find out if we received that grant first before we would hire for that job. When we received that grant, again, we had a hard time finding a qualified person for that position. So those funds are already in there. So we have a plan. We've hired a lot of people. We definitely have 2 interventionists at the high school. We have an instructional coach at the high school and the middle school, and an extra one at forestry. We've got so we've spent it on a lot of people, but our plan was an awful lot of people. So there are some of those positions that have not been filled at this point. And so in our conversation with the admin team today, they recognize the position that we're in and also would appreciate being able to do more than 2%. And so we had this whole conversation today about those positions that were proposed and not filled. Could we live without those positions for the remaining 2 years of ESSER? And so recognizing that, if the spending cliff we've been talking about, we give an inflationary increase, it could be for this year, and then we wait and see what CPI does next year, or it could be for the next 2 years of ESSER. Those monies are going away when our ESSER funds are gone. We already have that cliff of all these positions of great people that are doing great work, that if this funding formula from the state, the biennial budget, doesn't increase our spending authority, we're already going to have to do pink slips. We're going to have to do some non-renewals of those people already. So that's why we want to be very clear that using ESSER funds to do an increase on salaries is very sketchy territory, in my opinion.
Unless it's a one-time.
Right, one time.
Because it's one time.
So adding that to, yes.
Because you're digging your hole deeper instead of.
And we're already afraid of climbing out of the hole. I don't, yeah. So we don't need any decisions tonight. As you can see, we're still in the red. We're still exploring the health insurance renewals just came in, and we're digging through trying to see what other possibilities exist. And so we're not asking for any action on that. We are going to move forward with those reductions because I feel like you already approved the section sizes last year, and all of these reductions in here are in alignment with that section size that you talked about. The reason that it's important for us to be able to move on is the closer we get to that April statutory deadline of issuing non-renewal, if we haven't let those other dominoes fall, I'm fearful, and the principals are fearful, that good people are going to start applying elsewhere because they're uncertain whether they have a seat on the bus or not. And so the sooner we can affirm to them that there's a seat on the bus and we want you to fill it, the less likely they are to apply and go elsewhere. So those 2 resignations today. Those are posted internally. These grade levels that you see listed here, 4K, first grade, and third grade, all know that they're, according to our enrollment, there's gonna be one less of you, so you should apply for those 2 jobs that are out there. We just don't want our staff to be fearful that there's not gonna be a spot for them, and then they start applying elsewhere, because that's counterproductive.
I was gonna say, maybe it would be good to see next time with a 3% or 4%, whatever it costs, but if we know that each percent costs
$126,000 for
we can
each
figure that
percent.
out, we don't even need that.
Well, for the next time, the percentages, what would the one-time, would look like? I'm just curious about that too, because I don't,
One-time
you're still formulating right now, so I don't expect that. But something, options to look at, I guess, as well, like which is what you're saying, I believe, yes.
You could look at 126,000 out of ESSER, and that's a 1% one-time inflationary.
Yeah.
In addition to that 2% pool.
Right, yeah,
For a total of 3%.
or some, yeah.
What we thought is if we were going to go that route, there would be $1 amount for teachers, 1 amount for support services, and 1 for support staff, as opposed to some people work more hours. It just felt like a more, if it's an inflationary increase, it felt like a way to give everyone a bump.
Really appreciate you bringing it back all these months ahead of time here too. I mean, this is nice for us to be able to consider all different options. Thank you for all the work that goes into this.
So we have a lot of new players around the admin table, and they sat there like, how long do we have to stare at this spreadsheet until we have more ideas, folks? Come on. All right.
Okay. Furniture bids.
Furniture bids. So Jill has done a monumental amount of work on this. Why don't you explain to them what you have?
Sure. Sorry, I can't see my glasses. I can't see without my glasses. So.
Get it?
So we started our furniture bid process a long time ago, and I got the opportunity to meet with the teachers in January and February to actually drill down to what they really need, and so that was kind of fun. And people are so like, well, I don't really need much. I'm like, well, how's your chair? How's your desk? I mean, this is the time that we do this because this is the dollars that we have. I mean, we don't replace furniture as often as we probably should, and so really think about what you have in your room and what you might need. So I received bids from 8 companies for the most part. I had 2 more companies reach out originally, and then in the end they chose not to bid. The process was such that I had a whole packet. I wish I would have brought that, but I didn't. I had a whole packet for them that gave them an item that we were looking for, and I would accept alternates on most items. There were some things like we already have 7 tables, but we need 1 more, so I need that table. And for example, the music chairs in the choir and the band rooms, they have 1-year chairs. They look a very certain way. They have chrome on them. They're black. We'd like them all to match. I don't want, a different kind of chair mixed in with them. So there were situations like that where we were looking for a specific manufacturer. In the end, we took alternates on a lot of things. So what I did, I went through the spreadsheet. I allowed them to bid by item. We didn't want to do a total bid necessarily because some things are more advantageous if they can bid on one thing because they don't necessarily carry all of the items that we had on our bid package. So just going through the process, I've highlighted the ones that were low bid. In this case, this one was low bid, but we're looking at doing this bid over here with the brighter yellow by Atmosphere Commercial Interiors. The reason is they didn't bid to specs. They bid a round table. We wanted square tables for a specific purpose. So those are the kinds of things that we went through. So overall, in the end, and I put this in your packet, and I apologize that you didn't get this sooner, but I had to look at all the alternate bids that they sent me and contact them for questions if I had any questions on any of them too. So the total for forestry alone is $57,533. We are well within the furniture budget there, or what's called the FF&E budget, the fixed furniture and equipment, and fixtures, furniture, and equipment. We still have some other things that we need to purchase out of those dollars, but for the most part, this was the bulk of the furniture for the new spaces at 4th Street. And then in the high school, same kind of thing, same process. Here's where we had a little bit more specific must match or must be this item kind of thing. And in the end, we had chairs and tables and desks and some fun furniture for the studio in Julie Teeden's area where they'll be doing interviews and things like that. And then the music, specific information or specific kind of items that, again, not all companies can bid because they don't have that item. And $37,513 at the high school was the total there. The budget for FF&E at the high school is around $97,000, and for 4th Street it's around $200,000. And again, we still have some furniture that we need to bid. We have separate budgets for appliances at the high school for the face room, and we have separate budgets at each school for technology as well. So when we order smart boards or anything else that we need for those new spaces, they'll come out of a separate line item as well.
And so just to be clear, those are all referendum funds that we've been talking about. Some schools just asked the architect to do all of this, and last time the Red Creek High School project, Jill and I tackled it together, and this time she did it all herself, and it's a lot to get down to those minutiae detail, but we saved quite a bit on the markup of their service charge as well. So.
And I thought I heard Jill say this was fun.
Did I say that?
Fund? Fund? Did you say fund?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jill, I like a good spreadsheet, but we have different definitions of fun.
It was fun. It was good. It was fun to meet with the teachers to talk about what they need in their spaces. And we have lots of other spreadsheets where we total the number of chairs we needed. And then, I mean, it's pretty voluminous, but this is just the quick and dirty summary of all the bids that we received for those items.
And wanting to get them ordered because of all the back order and supply.
Yep. We want to beat the other school districts who are ordering in April and May anyway, so I'm going to get our orders out there. So.
Any questions? I make a motion to approve the furniture bids.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
CISA contract.
In your folders, you saw this year's CISA contract, as well as I put last year's in there for your perusal. Just for those of you that are new to the conversation, through CISA, we have a couple standing things. First is my professional advisory committee, my PAC meeting. So there's 26 districts. All the superintendents get together once a month and just get a lot of DPI updates, a lot of local, regional, all of those kinds of things. We also have Nicole, who belongs to the School Improvement Services. So that is a collection of all the curriculum directors in the region. And then there's also an RSN, which is Angie and all of the support people services people. So all of those great big pieces. And then there's other individual things that we purchase throughout the year. The heaviest item, the highest cost items are under the special education, the specific services. If you want to scroll down, Jill, it's like 420, 482. There we go. So this whole bottom section right here, those are those itinerant services that we need pieces of a person. We would never have enough of those service needs for all of a person, yet they sell them in blocks of minutes and it's incredibly expensive. All of those itinerant services are called for based off of each individual student's IEP. So those are legally, we are legally bound to provide those services. I always tell this story. At one point, our physical therapist got to be so high that we said, we're just going to hire one and bring her here because we were paying an itinerant service way more than the salary. And so we keep watching this to see how close we're getting to that, whether it would be less expensive to hire someone on our own if we were able to find somebody. I will tell you that the hearing impairment, that one may change. We have more than one student though. So I did talk to you guys about that younger student who we're co-oping with a neighboring district, but we do have more than one student. This is still based off of that student being in our district. So that student's IEP meeting is coming up and Angie and Barb Luke are keeping tabs on whether the student will return to our district or whether they will stay where they're at. The other services are, again, they're just very small slivers of expertise, but they are expensive. So overall, our costs are slightly up from last year. The one piece that we're not doing this year is for coming next year, we also had like 40 days of a school psychologist to help we had 2 brand newbies and we needed some mentorship, and so we paid a gentleman from CISA to come up and be that mentor. Andrew's talked to both of our school psychs. They both feel confident that they no longer need that external mentorship, and so we're reducing that but increasing some of those other services. You may recall that was it physical therapy this year, Angie, that we got stuck on?
Yes.
Yes, so last year at the time we approved this contract, the director at the time forgot to check physical therapy, and we worked all summer to hire our own. CISA then didn't have anybody for us because CISA hires their staff based on all these contracts that they get back, and so they didn't have a staff member for us. We tried hiring all year. Unfortunately, we started the school year having to send letters to all of those students' families that say, we're going to owe you compensatory services, but we have nobody. And so we still right now don't have a school physical therapist. We have an outside agency who we're contracting to provide those services. So we're all over it this year, got it on the contract, and so hopefully CISA will be able to hire for that. Any questions about the CISA contract?
Seeing no questions, is there a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve the CISA contract as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Meeting minutes were in your packet. Anything you want pulled out for discussion or change?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Dr. Severson's report.
I have just a few things for you. Mary Jo brought it up earlier. If you have not been down to the public library to see the Our Town display, it is pretty neat. I put a picture in your packet if you're interested in looking at it, but the public library has gotten lots of feedback on it, so it's really well done. The athletic trainer, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about those services. So in previous years, the Black River Memorial Hospital has gifted the district athletic trainer services. Dawn Jacobson has been that person, and she's amazing at her job. But due to their own financial situation, they have stopped funding that. And so for this current school year is the first year that we've been on our own. Andy Osgard, our new activities director, has worked to find coverage. Dawn was willing to cover some of the outside events this fall. And Andy keeps talking to Jill and I about where do we go from here. He has reached out to other hospitals. He met with Prevea. The quotes that they're putting together are about $40,000 a year. So we've had a zero cost, and then we need to do something. So Andy has, so just to clear it up, like impact testing is something all athletes are required to do initially, so that if there's any fear of concussion, they can go back and test to make sure that, so that is one piece. The second piece is concussion protocol. So if an athlete does have a concussion, Dawn facilitated that return to play protocol. There's also been heavy services on kind of a lump and bump clinic. So an athlete gets hurt at a game, they come to school the next day. When Dawn gets there, they get to go ask her for free advice, like, should I go into a doctor? Should I not go into a doctor? We've received feedback from a couple families of athletes who are extremely frustrated that we don't have those services to provide. It was a very quick flip on our inability to find someone to do that, and we certainly didn't have $40,000 around, and that wasn't something they could start right now, something we could plan and move forward. We asked Andy to investigate what does WIA say we have to have, and then what's best practice. And so for a school district our size, so let's take winter sports. A school district our size, wrestling, boys hockey, girls boys basketball should have an athletic trainer at each of those live events, is kind of the standard expectation. Fall, football, and volleyball should have somebody there. Spring, it's only track that should have somebody there. So Dawn has agreed to be our on-site person. We only have one home track meet this year, so she's going to do that. So that buys us a little bit of time, but we don't have anybody for that lump and bump. When something happens at a basketball game, a parent actually said to me, I'm glad my daughter got hurt at an away game because they had an athletic trainer. Had we been in Black River, there would have been no one there to help her. So I don't have any solutions. I just want to make you aware of this because I don't know if you've heard from any families of athletes. In this budget picture, we have to try to figure out what we're going to do. I feel like that would be something that would be great to partner with the Booster Club because they do some pretty large fundraising. They really don't want to pay for any salaries, and I can respect that because that's an ongoing cost as opposed to a one-time donation like they usually do. So again, I don't mean to just give you problems, but I wanted you to be aware just in case you heard anything. Also wanted to talk about Mr. Nortman this evening is excused. His daughter is the Cooley Region Female Scholar Athlete, and so he is there celebrating her tonight. And so thought Dad would be preempted coming to the board meeting. We are also having conversations. So currently we have a part-time 4K teacher who spends, it used to be a full-time person, they would spend 1 full day at Ho-Chungra and 1 full day at San Pillow. This year the enrollment at both Ho-Chungra and San Pillow were extremely lower than usual, like extremely lower. They run a full Head Start program, and then our 4K teacher pushes into their already existing program and does the 4-year-old kindergarten programming. Those kids already don't get that programming as often because it was 1 full day at Ho-Chungra, next full day at San Pillow, is how we have done it. The enrollment this year is so incredibly low that we can't justify a full-time teacher for 8 kids because of the programming. As they have made modifications to the timing, we're no longer meeting often enough for that student to count on our enrollment, and so we are getting 0 reimbursement for any of the students that we're providing services for. So Laurel Meek, former board member, I'm excited to get to meet with her tomorrow morning and catch up on her current world and talk to her a little bit about this. So what the 4K staff at Forest Street would like to do is they would love for the remainder of this school year to bring all the 4K kids from Ho-Chungra and San Pillow to Forest Street so they can provide daily services as opposed to the extremely intermittent services they're currently getting. Further than that, we would love for next school year for them to either bring them in, but we recognize that is not a favored option from the Head Starts and the families involved in the Head Starts. So at the very least, we're going to advocate for them all to go to one site so that our teacher could go to one site and be there every day. Melanie's got years of data that would show the students who come to the school and get services every single day consistently on our schedule are starting kindergarten more prepared for that academic work. So this year we are gifting that halftime teacher. You saw our budget picture. We cannot continue to gift. And so for next year, it's either going to be, you're going to consolidate so we can claim some reimbursement for those students, or when you can bring them in, but we're not going to be able to provide services the way that we currently are. So
the blending of those 2 programs that you're talking about, the collaboration would be sharing the budget as well. They blend it. Head Start teacher and our teacher are there every single day, and they just blend the program together.
Not exactly. So they fund and run their Head Start program, and they agree to allow a 4K teacher to come in when we were full, when they had larger groups, when there was at least like 12, 15 kids in each one of those sections. Our teacher would go AM at Ho-Chungra and PM at San Pillow, or they would go Monday Ho-Chungra, Tuesday San Pillow, whatever. But Head Start provided their programming all the time. Our teacher was there half the time because they divided. Now, because then our teacher was really serving 24 kids, which is a regular class size, right, but still less. And so if we're serving so few that we can't afford to put a teacher there, we need some give there.
The funding was from enrollment then, is that correct?
That's always our funding
Yeah,
source.
exactly. Yeah, so that's,
Every dollar.
that's how that worked. But now that's not possible. I think, okay, just making sure where the money came from.
Yep, absolutely. So those are my only updates that I have for you. Good news all over.
WASB and other. At CISA, we are getting a new administrator, so we're in the process of that search, and we're going through that search. Has the deadline has passed now, so we will be reviewing the applicants tomorrow and choosing our finalists. So I think budget. That's the updates I have. And the other conference or workshop attendance. School board connections. Brad, you had something?
Yeah, well, I know, Tom's gone now. Tom and I both, read for, Dr. Seuss's birthday week, which is also Read Across America week, and that was,
And I did too.
yeah, I didn't see the whole list, I saw Tom and I on there, but, my 3-year-old went to Red Creek, and he wants to stay there, so. He was not happy when he left. Yeah, he didn't know there were that many books, we got to see the library. Andy also pressed me into service again. I know how to work the wrestling system, so I pressed into service for the middle school tournament, which again, Andy's not here, but that was I heard again how it was a well-run event. It was, it's a middle school event, so a lot of wrestling in a big hurry.
Middle schoolers are always in a hurry, no matter
Well,
what
yeah,
they're doing,
yeah.
right?
And there's a lot of pins, so the matches go very fast. I've repped at that level, and it's very confusing. But fun at the same time. And then Brad Markert and I, not only does he have a great first name, but he talked about starting beekeeping in the ag class. So I reached out to Brad recently, and I have 25 years of very poor level of beekeeping, but yeah, so Brad and I are going to deal in bees this spring. So
Excellent.
I may come in very stung for me, but no, no, I should.
I hope you're not allergic, or do you
I'm
pray
not.
not?
No, I am not. And that's, Brad and I have talked about this. Students that are going to be around it need to not be allergic or have an EpiPen. You don't have to get stung, but it is part of the job. So it should be interesting. So I'm excited for him to start it.
And Brad and I worked with the teacher handbook, and you
Oh,
worked
yep, yeah.
this last week, worked with that, and then also a standards-based grading. What we were doing this last time is trying to figure out what steps need to be done in able to do full implementation by 23-24. And at the elementary level, what I heard, and maybe this isn't correct, is all staff is on board right now with standards-based. Middle school, Dan Nortman thought about 80% were on board. High school was like 50-50 at this time, but they really feel that communication is the key next detail to really push out. Elementary's been pushing a lot out. The rest are on board to start doing that.
Excellent. I think Dan was being generous.
That's
right.
I do believe that's what he said.
He did say
Okay, well, good for him. Then he's probably right.
Anything else? For a future agenda, we have April 11th, a change from the 4th to 8th. That's all I have. Now we have the election.
There's been some community interest in starting some, I would call it focus groups or something again. The employer roundtable, is that what it was called? Previously, bringing that kind of back. And yeah, and
community business partners is what we called it. It was our business partnership committees.
Yeah, I think it's time to start talking about some of those things again.
Got it.
Okay, sounds good. Anything else? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.